Welcome, everybody, to the David Araki podcast. And I know it's been quite some time since we last met. I had a bunch of things I had to take care of in my personal life, but I'm glad to be back here again. And this week, we have our guest, Kenny. What's up, Kenny?
Hello.
Um,
How's
why,
it?
don't you,
How's it?
why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Um, my name's Kenny, just like David said. I went to Roosevelt High School back in Hawaii with David, and after that, I moved out to Washington to pursue a career in cultivating cannabis.
Wow. Okay. You brought up two very interesting things. I thought we'd throw it back to high school because, I feel like I haven't seen you since high school. How's it
Yeah,
been,
pretty
man?
much.
Yeah, like, how's it been? It's been like almost 10 years. Jeez. And then,
Um, it's been pretty
yeah.
fun, pretty wild. Just been really busy.
Mm,
I didn't really stay in Hawaii very long after I graduated.
mm. When did you move up to Washington?
In 2015 in the summertime.
What were you doing in between then and like since graduation? That was like a nice 3 year gap.
Not a whole lot. I was trying to go to school. I was in college for radiologic technology, and then I was working at Chuck E. Cheese in Tanaka, Tokyo.
Was that at UH? UH has a radiology program.
Oh, no way, dude. I was at
Oh,
KCC.
oh, KCC. I didn't even know they had a radiology like technician program there. That's kind of interesting.
They have a they have one of the best ones, or at least when I was in college at the time, it was supposedly one of the best ones because they had a lot of like newer lab equipment that you learn on. So like the CT or like the MRI devices and whatnot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess like I don't know. So the last interview I did was with Michael Matsuoka and Richie. Forgot his last name, but like yeah,
Right.
they're like 1 year under us. What was your experience at Roosevelt like? Because honestly, like I don't remember anything about high school. Like it's been so
Um,
long, and I don't trust my memory.
Same here. It was all right. I felt like it was kind of like being in a waiting room. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, and I knew for a fact that still illegal in Hawaii, so I'd have to like figure somewhere else to do it. And at the
Hmm.
time, like my family wanted me to go into medicine.
Hmm.
I wanted to go into horticulture, and that's kind of two different paths.
Hmm.
So I kind of took medical classes in school and then just read horticultural books on the side.
Oh,
And then I
okay.
kept up to date with like what states in the US were legal or where could I go to grow weed?
So you were thinking about that whole time while you're in the radiology program?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I didn't even make it to the radiology program. You see, I found a college in Washington that had the same program, so I could transfer over to that college, and then I could easily move to that state, and then basically I transferred over to Bellevue College, and then started just growing weed in the house that I was renting.
So how does that work? Like, I guess we'll get into like yeah, what you're doing now. Like, how does like growing weed like work? Like, is there any like regulations or anything that like you have to go through,
Um,
or like
Out
getting any
here in
licenses?
Washington, there's two ways to do it. You either get work at a 502, or it's through the Initiative 502. So the I-502 companies are state legal recreational cannabis companies. So they produce, process, and retail cannabis products. And there's also some side or supporting businesses that do like logistics and packaging that are now like cannabis specific. So that's like the little cannabis industry for the rec. But the other way to do it is with medical, and that you have to go to a doctor with an issue that can be prescribed marijuana. Usually, it has to do with like things that are chronic illnesses, things that have pain, or things that replace other medications. So if you're able to prove to your doctor or prove to this doctor who's your referred doctor for your medical card, you have to prove to him that cannabis has adequately replaced one of your prescribed medications, and they'll give you a card. And you have an 8 plant per limit, or 8 plant per card limit. And what you can do is, if you can't grow it yourself, you'll have someone else do it, known as a caretaker. And a caretaker can take on an undefined amount of, patients, so they can have a higher plant count than just a single individual alone. So I came into the medical scene initially when I moved out here as a caretaker.
Oh, that's interesting. So why Washington, as compared to any other state with like legal like cannabis?
Um, I wanted to experience somewhere that was cold, that had snow.
Mm.
That, and I also have family out in Washington, so it made it kind of like easier to move out there, knowing that I had like a backup or like some support.
Oh, are you were you born in Washington or something, or your
Oh
family's just
no,
from Washington?
I was born at Capioni.
Oh, oh, you're one of those babies then.
I'm not too sure what that means, but yeah, I
Oh,
guess so.
oh, they say that like only like the difficult pregnancies and stuff end up going to like Kapiolani. It's like a specialty hospital for like difficult like pregnancies and whatnot.
Okay, I guess so.
Yeah, because it's like a women and children's hospital, right? Or primarily women and children. So yeah. So like you want to so like what has like the move been like, up in Washington? Like you've been there for about 5 years now, 6 going on 6. Like what is it like and how different is it from Hawaii?
It's uh, it's pretty fun. You get a lot of experiences, both like good ones and bad ones. But it's kind of, compared to Hawaii, it's really open, and surprisingly diverse in like the in the types of activities that you can engage in.
Like what kind of activities are you talking about? And
Well, there's like snowboarding, there's driving cross country, like going like state to state, being able to do that. Um, what else?
or what do you do?
What do I do?
Yeah, let's talk about you.
Honestly,
We're
I
here to
don't
talk
do
about you.
I don't really do a whole lot. I kind of just grow weed, which takes up most of my time, just like watering the plants and whatnot. And I snowboard when I can. I like motorcycles. I just got into that 2 years ago. I got my motorcycle's endorsement so I could ride. And I've been getting into barbecuing and
Oh,
like
okay.
trying to learn how to cook properly, instead of just like throwing a whole bunch of stuff in a pan and hoping
Is that
it
a
turns out.
is that a COVID hobby?
A COVID hobby?
Yeah. I know a
Um,
lot of people have been getting into like baking bread. Some people have been into like making candy or selling candy. I know a few people that are into like smoking meats and barbecuing, and that really ramped up like because of like quarantine and everything.
I guess you could say it could be a COVID hobby,
Oh,
but it's just something that I was putting off for a while.
oh, okay. All right. So I have to ask, like, how many plants do you currently have? Are you allowed to say?
Um, Me personally, are plants that I take care of, because there's plants
Um,
that I own, and then I also work for a couple of other people.
I guess both. Like, I don't know. Like, I've never talked to like a weed caretaker before, and I kind of want to like just find out everything and anything about it. So, like, yeah, feel free to if you like think you're spending too long talking about something, that's great. Like, I want you to spend more time talking on it.
Okie dokie.
Yeah.
I'm just like
And if you have any
getting
questions for
comfortable
me, yeah,
talking
like,
about this, because I don't normally get the opportunity to talk about what I do. very
Yeah.
often.
Oh no, that's fine. Like, this is perfect. Like, I want to give you the opportunity to talk about yourself and what you're doing and everything. I'm sure like there will be a lot of people like who, especially from high school, probably thinking like, oh, what has Kenny been up to all these years?
Yeah,
Like,
I
and
kind
then
of just
and
disappeared.
yeah, you disappeared, and then like I think like a week ago or so, or a few days ago, I saw you like put a post out on Facebook, and I was just like, holy crap, this guy's still alive.
Yeah, that's because my one of my bosses was trying. I guess he was trying to call me or get my attention,
Hmm.
but I wasn't listening or I couldn't hear him because I was in the grow room watering, and so he came looking for me and he came into the room and I guess he was still calling me and I wasn't answering, so he took a picture of me and sent it to me, and then I looked at my phone and I was like, oh shoot, and so I looked up and he was
Oh.
like standing there like, you not hearing me calling? I'm like, nah, dude, I'm trying to look at the plants, like I'm watering right now, I'm working.
Mm. Is like watering like those plants like specific in comparison to say like some other people's like house plants or whatnot?
Mm, yes and no. Yes, specific if you're in the way that we water because we're trying to maximize yield and quality, but no in the way where you can grow a cannabis plant just straight watering it and treating it just like you would a house plant. However, the chances that that plant will reach its full genetic potential is very slim. Like you won't have like sorry, you won't have a very remarkable plant.
So like what's like different about the way you water it then? Like how do you maximize your watering technique so that you get the most potential out of the plant?
Well, for the watering technique itself, we are transitioning over to automated watering or the Blue Mat automated watering system. It uses a ceramic carrot that contains water and has a little membrane that, um, depending on how much moisture there is present inside of the grow medium, it will the carrot because the ceramic is porous, water will flow in and out of it through osmosis. And if there's a lot of water in the grow medium, then the water's not going to flow into the carrot. Or no, then yeah, the water is going to flow into the carrot because it's drier inside the carrot than it is in the media. So it pretty much is a way for us to measure how much moisture is in the water using osmosis. Is it what is it called?
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah, using
osmosis.
just like passive osmosis.
Mm.
And basically, so we have it set up where once it reaches when it's at a specific pressure or moisture content, the lines will open up and the water will kind of drip out, and or the water will fill these drip lines, which is these, how would you describe? They're like porous paper or membrane like paper, but it's like this hose that water kind of drips out of it very slowly.
Mm. So
Because
what is
basically the whole point of that technique is you don't want to disrupt the soil. You
mhm.
don't want to disrupt the biome or like the biology of the soil, like the microbes and whatnot in there. Sometimes if you water too hard, you'll kind of compact the soil and the soil becomes anaerobic. So there's no oxygen in that compacted bit of soil. So everything that's living there starts to die and you kind of lose out on like benefits from that. And on top of that, if you're watering once a day, if you're not able to like be present and water exactly when the plant needs water, you're probably going to have to water more than you should, and that can also create another anaerobic environment by just having more water than there is oxygen, and you can like suffocate the roots, or you can like kill more of the microbes inside of the soil. So the ideal watering technique would be to like drip water into the medium very slowly throughout a long period of time, or like multiple times a day, so that you're making sure that the grow medium stays within a consistent moisture content without having very like aggressive or disruptive watering, smashing, compacting things down.
Sorry about that.
I mean, I'm not too sure how to explain it. Like, I kind of learned it on the job. I'm
Hmm.
not too sure if there's, the very technical words for it.
Oh no, no, no! Like that's already very interesting. Like I can already say I learned something new today. It's like a
But it's
ceramic
basically
carrot.
just trying to not over water, but not under water. You just want to hit those sweet spot, those equilibrium spots.
So like is like the medium just soil?
Um, it's soil in the flower and Promix in the veg. And Promix is just a mix of peat moss, sphagnum moss, and perlite. And in some of them, they add a fungi called mycorrhizae, which is just like this um, it's a fungus that forms a symbiotic relationship with the plants and helps the plant collect nutrients from the soil, since the fungi itself grows into like it has mycelium, its own root system that grows a lot faster and is usually a lot more well adapted at moving nutrients around in the soil than roots are. So they'll communicate with each other with exudates, or like liquid excrements, or like liquid hormones that they put out into the soil, so they can send messages to each other, so the plant can tell the fungus like, hey, I'm short on nitrogen. I know there's nitrogen at this corner of the bed or at this corner of the pot, but I can't reach it. So the mycorrhizae can then, if the mycorrhizae's hyphae or their roots reaches to that point, then what it can do is trade the nitrogen for carbon that's the plant produces, or like the sugar or the carbohydrates that the plant produces, can trade it with the fungi, and in exchange for the nitrogen that it can use to continue its biological processes or whatever.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's the grow medium that we use. The soil that we use is organic living soils. It's kind of like dirt that you would buy at the store, except instead of having it, I mean, it is got all the nutrients that the plant needs in the dirt, but not in the same form that most people are accustomed to. Instead of the nutrients being sourced from salts or synthetics, it's made from broken down detritus that's broken down by the living soil web, or the soil food web. That's what it's called. A soil food web, which basically is a blanket term for bacteria, mycorrhizae, fungus, protozoa, and then bigger creatures like earthworms, centipedes, beetles, and all that kind of stuff. Things that just like if you were to imagine a natural environment, like in a forest somewhere that's like not controlled by man or anything like that, when stuff falls on the ground or when stuff dies, whatever naturally breaks it down into and turns it into soil again, that's what we're exploiting in the soils that we use, so that we have I guess you can say it's like a cleaner, or the term I guess you can use is organic, since we're not using synthetic salts made in a lab, and we're not really adding anything other than organic material to it. It's a natural cycle. And so we're using a natural cycle to break down waste that we have, like food waste or animal waste or wood chips. Wood chips is a really good one that we use a lot of, but pretty much just things that normally you can throw away. You can sort through it and pick out like things that are organic and just throw it into the dirt. And over time, it'll break it down and turn it into food for the plants. Which is how we feed our plants.
Oh, okay. So that's like, so you guys don't use any fertilizers. It's like all organic.
We do use fertilizers, but we've just come across a new line of fertilizers that's plant derived. So they get their nutrition from fermenting, I think so. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So basically what this guy does, and the company's name is The Rooted Leaf. It's great nutrients, not only for cannabis, but just for plants in general. It's a cool company. The guy who owns it I think he's like a biochemist from Northern or Eastern Europe or something like that. I still gotta figure that one out. My boss, he just met him, and he's like learning a whole bunch of new stuff. But the Rooted Leaf line So what he does, he sources specific species and variants or cultivars of plants and whatnot, and then he'll boil it or like he'll mix it with water and break it down to its like essential parts or or I'm not too sure the exact science behind it because honestly it's way beyond me. This is chemistry that I did
Mm-hmm.
not do good in.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm now having to like use it, so I'm like learning. I'm trying to learn a little late out the gate, but it is what it is. But anyways, and not only that, so not only is his plants or not his plants, not only is his nutrients all plant derived, so he doesn't source anything from animals or anything from like rocks or artificial sources like that. It's all plant derived, and he also adds a lot of dissolved oxygen into it, which is something that I don't think I can name any other nutrient company, cannabis or general agricultural based, that adds um, dissolved oxygen to their nutrients, which is a big thing to help accelerate the growth of your plant.
Oh, so dissolved oxygen. What is that? Like,
It's exactly what
do
it
you,
is. So,
do you know
I
the
mean,
process of like making dissolved oxygen?
well, the only way I know to make dissolved oxygen is like the same way when you have a fish tank with the air stone. You
Hmm.
just have oxygen pumping into the water, and through osmosis, oxygen binds with water. I honestly don't really know exactly how that process works myself,
Yeah,
but
I've always kind of wondered too, like, what does oxygenating like the water do? Like, I guess water holds oxygen. I didn't really like think about that, all that much or anything. But that's kind of interesting. So from there,
right.
you just oxygenate the water, and that's what you just call it, dissolved oxygen or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, he's probably has his own process of like adding it in there. Maybe he uses air stones as well, and just like kind of like lets it pump air into it before he bottles it. I'm not too sure. I'll probably have to ask him next time I see him.
Yeah, because like what I've always wondered is like, whenever you see those aerators or whatever they're called, like you see the bubbles of water or air, sorry, like bubbling to the top of the surface of the water. So I figured like, oh, since it's just bubbling to the top, since it's a gas trying to mix with a liquid, like how does that work? I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can't answer that or anything, but
Nah, but I
unless you
mean,
can.
I always figured it was just like whatever was on this, whatever, it's like a surface area thing. So in the
Hmm.
bubble, whatever's on the surface of it might be dissolving or like finding its way into the water. But I honestly couldn't, I can't explain it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I do know that it's good for the plants because the plants are able to absorb oxygen through their roots and
Hmm.
it helps with their respiration.
Okay. So, do you grow your plants indoor or outdoor? For the listeners, I already saw that image.
Indoors, way easier, a
In
lot easier,
it's easier indoors. Uh,
definitely.
are there people that grow stuff outdoor?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that grow, or most of the people I know grow, so I could say that a lot of people grow outdoors. But there's a decent amount of people in general out here that do outdoor grows. My roommate's dad just did one this past year, and it was decent. He got some pretty tall plants,
So, like, how many like growers are there out in Washington?
a lot.
A lot. You don't have like a number in your mind?
I would say there's at least 50 plus growers that live in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
I've met personally at least like a dozen and a half, maybe 2 dozen growers.
2 dozen growers. Okay. Wow. And then, do you guys supply all of the weed for recreation and medicinal purposes in the state of Washington?
No,
Or
heavens no. That's a large order to fill. I would need I would need more time, but
Oh,
our operation is kind of small in the bigger scheme of things. Cause like there's a few grows out here that supposedly have 100,000 square feet of canopy space, and every 16 yeah 4 by 4 yeah 4 by 4 space, 16 square feet can produce, if you're a really good grower, about 2.5 to 3 pounds. And they have 100. There's some recreational companies that have 100,000 square feet of canopy, so they're producing like thousands,
yeah.
like literally, like they have rooms. My favorite, I'll probably send you some pictures of like our recreation of it. But my
Okay.
favorite is some of their drying rooms where they hang after they harvest, where they hang all the weed up. It's just walls, curtains, bins, buckets, totes, just full of weed. And even before you get into the room, like walking down the hallway, it just like hits you in the face, just like boom.
Oh,
There's
okay.
marijuana here. It's like strong.
Okay, I have to ask, can you take me through the process of like, okay, you have like a seed, like how do you turn that seed into a product that you're selling to like,
So the seed to
the
sale.
masses? Yeah, can you take
Yeah.
us through that journey?
So there's two routes that are popular. There's seed to sale and soil to oil. They're kind of like self-explanatory. Stoners like things to rhyme. Stoners, they like anything that's gonna, get a giggle. It's like, oh fuck it. Like especially with some of the strain names. But anyway, so seed to sale. Well, so in the very beginning, you either start with the cutting off another plant or a clone, or you start with a seed. And if you start with a seed, you can choose. There's many ways that you can germinate that seed. I personally just float it in some filtered water overnight, and I wait until like I see a little white taproot kind of pop out. It usually takes about 28 to what's half a day, like 28 to 40 hours or so.
Mm.
It doesn't take too long to germinate, and then from there we want to transplant it into soil or depending on, I mean, this way there's a lot of variations because it depends on what medium you're using and what your outcome. But I'm gonna, for the sake of just so that I don't keep stuttering and so I can get my shit straight, we're just gonna go with seed in peat moss that goes into soil and then flower and harvest. Like that's one of many ways of getting the cat skin. But so anyways, you have the seed with the taproot. You want to put that, with the taproot face down into your next, pot, like your media or your pro mix. And that usually, oh, sorry, I'm skipping steps. So you get the seed planted. The next thing you do is you kind of just wait. It'll keep growing until it starts to sprout its first set of leaves, which takes, from the time the taproot comes out, it takes maybe 3 to 5 days. And then it's like 3/4 of an inch tall, sometimes taller. And then it's another 2 weeks to a month, depending on what strain you have, before it gets close to entering its next stage of life or flowering. But sorry, you after sorry, I'm trying to get the steps right because it's weird having to like actually describe it.
Mm.
But you put yeah, there's not much to it. You water. I mean, during the whole the point of veg is to just get the plant big enough or to an adequate size, which is also dependent on like what kind of grow what kind of operation that you plan on doing. But anyways,
Okay, so how long how long does it take from it, as like a seed into like something that's like ready for like harvest? And then after you harvest it, like how
It
is
can
it
take
like
about 4
processed?
months.
4 months.
So it germinates for 2 days,
Mm-hmm.
and then you veg the plant for about a month to a month and a half, depending on how big you want it. And then you flower it for about 6 to 11 weeks, depending on the strain and depending on the conditions of your room. If your conditions are ideal, your plant will mature a lot faster. If your conditions aren't ideal and your plant faces a lot of stress growing up, then it'll take longer for your plant to mature. Sometimes they just don't.
What is ideal and not ideal like conditions?
So an ideal condition, like for me personally, what I like to have for, or what I consider perfect conditions, is about 75 to 81 degrees. And that's about that with like a 3 to 5 degree fluctuation between daytime and nighttime. And then 45 to 50% humidity throughout the majority of the grow, or throughout the majority of the flower. But for the first couple of weeks, I like to have it a little higher, so like 70 to 80%, because I keep my veg room, I keep the humidity in there very high because I want the plants to stay moist and a little healthier. And so for the flower, it would be great if you keep the humidity really high, but it also creates opportunity for molds and mildews to grow, which is why we keep the humidity at 45 to 50%, because that's as high as we can take it before we create an environment that's inviting for pests like molds and mildews. Powdery mildew botrytis is the two big ones that I had to deal with. Oh yeah, so 75 to 81 degrees for the temperature, 70 to 80% humidity for the first 2 weeks of flower, and then 45 to 55% for the rest of the run. And then you want to keep airflow constantly going throughout the room, but you never want to have the direct airflow onto the plant be too intense. I mean, you can judge this by looking at it. Like you'll see the plant stalk, like it'll sway. If it's nice, it'll sway slightly. Like mostly you'll see like the leaves kind of like flutter in the wind, or like in the air that's moving around it. That's perfect. But if you see the whole branch or like the whole stalk moving, in my opinion, that's way too much, and that movement is causing the plant to stress out. And there's a good chance that every time that plant touches something else, wherever it makes contact, is probably generating stress hormones or something like that. But you don't want it. You want just the plant leaves to flutter, because you're not trying to move the plant. You're just trying to move the air around the plant, since the plant can't. But yeah, you just want the air to move around the plant so that the plant can have fresh air. Because if not, if the air is just sitting and there's no movement, the plant can suffocate. It can use up all of the gas in its vicinity and basically run out of like carbon dioxide, oxygen, or nitrogen from the air. So you just want to get good airflow, but you don't want to be like blasting them. And then you also want to have a very clean, like a very, very, very clean, very, very, very sterile environment. At the grow that I work at, we have air filters there, but we also have this thing called an agri-air, which ozonates and filters out virus. Like it's like a huge industrial air filter for agricultural purposes, but it sterilizes the air. Like if you leave it in a closed room overnight, when you go in there, there's not going to be like there's no living organism floating around in the air anymore. It kind of just takes care of it using black lights and filters.
Okay.
But getting back to it, that's what I would say is a ideal room, or like a ideal setting for the plant.
What about the light dark cycles?
When you're vegging, you want to keep it at a 12 on 12, or some. I mean, you can. Or sorry, my bad. When you're vegging, you want to keep it. We usually do 16 16 hours on and then 8 hours off. Some people, they do 24 hours because you can, but I honestly believe that it stresses the plant out, and you need some, you know, the plants need a sleep or a rest period, I guess.
Hmm.
So we don't run ours. We try to keep like a natural cycle. So 8 hours of rest, and then the rest of the time just growing. When we flip to flower, we like to do 3 days of darkness so that um the plant can build up a large amount of flowering hormone, which is triggered by longer nights. It's supposed to mimic like this change of the seasons. So the cannabis plant normally starts to, I guess, pop from its seed in spring, late spring, and is growing all throughout the summertime. And then when fall starts to come, when the day starts to get shorter and the nights get longer, it that's when it starts to flower out because it's trying to make it. Well, basically, in the natural cycle for the plant, where it's from, I believe it's like from the Middle East or up in the mountains over there. I'm not too sure. I've never been, but sorry, it's in its natural home where it comes from. Its whole task is to grow as much as it can during the summertime and then produce as many seeds as it can before snow comes in the winter, so that come next spring it'll have offspring and be able to do the cycle again. So in the indoor setting, we're just trying to mimic that. And so to make the plant flower, we extend night for as long as we can. So we'll do like 48 hours to 72 hours to make sure that the plant knows like, oh, it's time to flower. And then after that, we do a 12, 12, and 12, which is the most amount of time or the most amount of sun that we notice that we can have without having hermaphroditic problems, or without having the plant re-veg or revert back to a vegetative state. Because usually if we push it more than 12 hours a day, we start to see weird growth, like abnormal growth, like the plant's hormones are all mixed up.
Mm. So it's a night cycle that determines like whether or not it's a female plant versus like a male or like hermaphrodite plant
Oh
or
no,
something.
chromosomes do that. It's
Oh,
the same thing like
for
um
humans.
yeah, or
Oh, okay.
for most life,
Mm-hmm.
for most non-asexual life.
Yeah, because like I heard from my grandpa like he grows like green onions, like nothing on the scale of like what you're doing or anything, but like he always like pulls out like the green onions that what he calls male, like, and he says that like, oh, it's the female ones that taste better or something. I don't know. It could be like the other way around, and I like always wondered about that, and it's kind of interesting that you kind of mentioned that about like a hermaphroditic or like a abnormal growth like state.
I mean, it's definitely something that the plant world is not a stranger to. Hermaphrodites and just having confusion in the plants is actually quite common. I mean, I would say it's common because I'm becoming more aware of what to look for, but plants, they're all similar in the fact that the hormones that drive their growth is going to be the same in like different plants. Like for plants to grow longer, it's always, I mean, for plants to grow, basically, it's auxins, which drive upward plant growth, cytokinins, which drive root growth, and gibberellins, which drive cell elongation. So auxins would be like cell division, cytokinins would be cell division, creation of new cells, and then gibberellins was what is the hormone that would cause the cells themselves that are already created to stretch or to grow longer.
Earlier you mentioned a stress hormone. Do you happen to know what the stress hormone for plants is?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you. I couldn't name it, or I
Oh,
can't.
oh no, 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 that's
But
fine.
if I were to look at a plant, I could definitely tell whether or not it's stressed out, not necessarily because of the hormone, but through the physical response to the hormones that are being generated by the plant. So I'm not too sure what hormone is causing it, but I can see what's happening to it, and I know what causes the stress. So although I don't know the hormone itself, I know I know what's sorry. I know what stress causes what physical result. I'm just not too sure what's the hormone, the in between parts, you
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah, that one I take studying, and it's just weird names. It's not easy
Hmm.
names like strain names like banana cookie or unicorn jizz, or some, those
Yeah.
stuff is so easy to remember. And
Hmm.
then you get things like technical plant terms like chelation and nitrogen fixation this and rhizosphere that, and I'm like, oh Jesus, like I'm like reading the definition, but saying the word back to myself, I'm like, I don't think I belong saying this word, or I think if I were to say these words, people would be like, I wonder if he knows what he's talking about.
Oh.
Basically, like it just sounds out of my educational league.
Is that a goal of yours maybe to like pretty much become like a walking encyclopedia based on this type of stuff?
Well, definitely it's something that I've been giving a lot more time and effort to. Like I've been trying to learn more about the plant chemistry and plant biology, and like I've been trying to kind of just get the basics behind, like, or at least what's going on with the plant, so I can understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. So then if I see something happening in the plant, I can make changes, and just so that I can be more successful in growing,
Mm,
not necessarily for the sake of like gaining
knowledge
gaining
or anything?
knowledge.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I guess in a way it is gaining knowledge for the I don't know.
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time just like by myself with those plants. So socializing is kind of like, it's a weird, like, just conversations is a weird thing.
Do you talk to your plants?
Um, no, I talk to myself in front of the plants though, but I think that they think I'm talking to them, but who knows?
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if plants are like conscious or able to know if like people are talking to them. Like I've talked to like some people that have done like psychedelics, like DMT and whatnot, and they say like everything around you is alive. But then like I myself have no experience with like psychedelics, so I mean I don't know. It's an
Well,
interesting.
I've had some fun with some psychedelics before, and I know some growers out here who honestly believe that their plants do better when they talk to them. But at the same time, when I watch them in their own gardens and like how they talk to the plants and whatnot, I think more than anything, a plant doesn't respond to your presence. It doesn't respond to the sound waves you produce when you make a voice quite as much as it responds to the amount of carbon dioxide a human can make when they're just talking and talking and talking and talking. Like you produce a lot of carbon dioxide, and if you're not supplementing carbon dioxide in your indoor garden, and then you go in there and start talking a lot, you're starting to supply the plant with carbon dioxide that it's lacking, or that it's not getting. So it'll start growing better. And since you, as the grower who's doing this, went into your grow room, talked to your plants, and then started seeing your plants grow better after that, would assume that talking to your plants makes they respond to that. And especially like
Hmm.
I, I've been I've done mushrooms before, and like definitely if I were on mushrooms, and the way that you think and the way that you feel on mushrooms, I feel like it's a little naive and like a little too open, like in like how I am on mushrooms. I wish I were way more skeptical, because I'm way like just a lot more accepting of like, you know if I make an observation and I come up with a explanation, then that's what it is. I don't test it further than that. Like, so I can imagine someone else who's growing, or who's like really into psychedelics but not really into like the science or the chemistry behind plants would assume, you know, that the plants were responding to them talking and not just the gas that is being provided. Because honestly, as much as I want to say that, plants are alive and like, connected with that kind of stuff, from what I've learned, plants are natural machines that process gases and trace elements that found in the soil and the air and process it into different polyphenols, into different terpenoids, into different flavonoids, into different chemicals, into different compounds that serve different purposes or whatever. But basically they're machines that take basic elements and make them into more complicated elements that is then eaten by other more complicated forms of life so that they can make more complicated compounds and whatnot. And I guess that's like a natural machine or like a natural cycle or progression of entropy or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like
That's
psychedelics.
kind of how I view it, because like all of the plants' behaviors and growths, it's all based off of hormones based on stimulus, like external stimulus.
Hmm. Yeah, huh, that's interesting. You ever hear about that story of a guy trying to prove that water has memory?
Is that the one they did in Japan?
Yeah, I think it was a Japanese study.
Yeah,
Like
I've seen that one.
I don't know.
But
I
I think you're trying to make a point here.
No, no. I'm just like just wondering if you heard that like story. Especially since you have like colleagues that like to talk to their plants or something. So I'm kind of curious. I mean, I don't buy it like at all that water has memory. Like, not at least memory in the way that we like to conventionally think about it. Where you store memory in like your hippocampus and everything.
Like
Like,
crystal memory.
yeah, there's obviously no, yeah, it's like some weird thing that I know nothing about. But I don't know, like everybody tells me that I know who have done psychedelics that like, you start to believe things like that to be true because like I guess in a way it changes like your way of thought or something.
I mean, I wouldn't. It's hard to say if it changes your way of thought, because like, in the couple of times I've done mushrooms and like messed around with psychedelics, it while I'm on it, my thought patterns and my behaviors are a little different. But once I come down from it, I'm still kind of like the same person I was before. I mean, I went through that experience and I remember certain thoughts, but once I come back, like once I'm done being stimulated mentally from it, I'm still like, oh, okay, well, I'm still Kenny. I still have my past experiences in history, and I learned something from that trip, but I probably could have learned it without drugs, just experiencing life and being more like just being really observant or kind of aware of like what's going on in your experience. Like, I guess psychedelics can be mind opening, but I don't think that they're necessary to have mind opening experiences.
No,
You know,
no. Yeah.
that I guess is what I'm saying. So like, no one person gets enlightened from just psychedelics alone. And psychedelics can help a person become enlightened, but it's not because of the psychedelic, it's the person themselves. Or who knows? I'm not enlightened.
Yeah, that's like very interesting. So how much different is like a THC high in comparison to like what is the chemical in mushrooms? It's not mescaline.
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin, yeah.
Mescaline is in peyote or
Peyote
cannabis.
and DMT is dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah, that
Like,
stuff's from like ayahuasca or mimosa root.
yeah.
Or technically, it's in all forms of life.
Mm-hmm.
Produce different concentrations of it at different points in their life.
Yeah. Like so I've read supposedly that your pineal gland or pineal gland, however you pronounce it, produces some DMT endogenously. I also read that like your lungs endogenously produce DMT, but it's obviously not enough to have like a psychedelic experience or anything. But
I mean, I guess like they say that when you dream, that's your body producing DMT, and that's like a trip.
mm, yeah, it's like so
Like
bad.
when you
Like
have like near-death experiences and like your life flashes before your eyes, or
Mm-hmm.
like the second slow down. That's kind of like a DMT trip in a way, because like not all psychedelic trips are psychedelic. Some of them
Mm-hmm.
is just, you know, life feels a little weird, or a couple of senses are off, or you're feeling something that's not actually there because like this chemical is stimulating parts of your brain without reality having to like stimulate it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Yeah, that's like crazy. I don't know, like obviously like there's like a lot of things that I would be open to trying, except that like there's the whole legal aspect behind it. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I
I
know.
mean, you could go to Oregon if you really want to.
Yeah, it's everything's
If you really want to
decriminalized
go on
there.
like a Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia kind of experience, Oregon just gave the biggest okay ever. Like anything goes.
I
They
know.
decriminalize all drugs there.
Isn't it
It's
crazy that like you could
I
have
kind of
like
don't want to go back there just because I think it's gonna be a little wilder. I mean,
yeah.
meth and like hard drugs like that are illegal, so there's gonna be people just like nonchalantly
Yeah,
doing
just
them.
high out in
I
public or
just
something.
Yeah, like psychedelics and weed is already enough of a issue when people are on it. When you throw in stimulants into the mix and opiates, that's just a whole nother like headache to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of curious to know like if their instances or rates of like schizophrenia will go up. Like I know a lot of people think that like drugs like causes like schizophrenia in people, although like I've read a lot of things were saying that schizophrenia or like drugs don't give schizophrenia to anybody, but in a sense like it awakens it for people. I don't know. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how this experiment in like Oregon's gonna like play out or pan out. But
I mean, definitely there's potential of just drug use you know, or not causing, but aggravating or um I can't I'm not sure of another word, but just like
manifesting.
initiating like a mental illness that could have been like under wraps, or that
Mm-hmm.
like below the conscious awareness or whatever. It's definitely
Mm-hmm.
possible um for drug use to bring out mental illness, and I honestly believe that it is possible that like really intense drug use can cause people to develop mental illnesses based on the changes in like like the way I see it, if the drugs control over a person's behavior is so strong where the person is no longer doing the same routines or habits that um conducive to a healthy lifestyle that they were doing beforehand, it's very likely that they're going to develop a mental illness at the same time too, because it's just really, I mean, if their behaviors are changing and their habits are changing, something in their brain is getting rewired. And if like the start point of these changes was also the start point of their intense drug use, you know, then you can make a relation there. But that's something that I've seen in some people out here in
Mm-hmm.
Washington. Like I have a couple of friends that I made when I first moved out here that got into some pretty intense pill use. Like I'm actually pretty surprised by the recreation choices of a lot of people that I meet up here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of pills. Xanax is like a daily, you know. Anyways, they like opiates and whatnot. And one of my good friends got into like um in snorting oxycontin or snorting Percocets, or one of those two. But like he's in it really bad, and like he's like skinny, and like he does like all like I don't even have a prescription or anything, but the only time he ever hits me up is to ask me if I know anyone that can help him get more pills. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't even want to hang out with this dude anymore.
Oh.
Like you don't even hit me up to hang out. You hit me up because you're strung out. So
Mm-hmm. Does
it's rough.
does this guy have a job? Like I've always
Um,
wondered like what does the life look like for a lot of people that use drugs? Because I know a lot of
Um,
people that are like perfectly fine using drugs, like, and if you look at them, you would never suspect that they're a casual like drug user.
yeah, no, they're actually some of the heaviest users are gonna be the most normal looking in public, unless you know them personally or unless you've known them before their drug use. Because like one of the hardest things to hide from drug use is just the physical appearance, like the change that you'll see in some people. Like they'll
Mm.
either get really, really fat. Like I've seen like some opiate users, like people who strung out on heroin, just start to get I don't know what causes it, but they just get really fat. And then some people who are like on Percocets or like doing a lot of coke, they'll just get really skinny. But the guy that I know of, he's actually an owner of one of the processing companies out here in Washington. I can't, I honestly don't want to like, I mean, he's still my homie. I don't want to badmouth his company, but yeah, no, he makes bank. He makes a lot of money to the point, and like, he's not the one who's doing the work either. He has a lot of employees that they're really good at what they do. Like they make some really good bubble hash out here, some of the best. But he himself has a serious drug problem, the owner.
Mm.
And
Well,
then
that's
it's
yeah.
usually like people who own companies or people who are doing like online side hustles, or a lot of people that I've met work for Microsoft. They really like weed, coke, and like mushrooms for some reason.
Yeah, I know of like, or I have heard stories of a lot of people that work like in big tech that like to microdose like either mushrooms or like LSD or
Acid.
something. Yeah. Like I
Acid.
was
Yeah, that
I
was
always
a
thought that's
popular one.
really interesting. Like, of all things, like it's kind of like in a sense like changing your perception on like drug use in a way. It's like
Hmm.
you're not the same as like, or like what we grew up learning about drugs. I feel like is like very wrong about like what drugs are.
I feel like you're right.
Oh wait, well, okay,
And
I have to like put out a disclaimer. Like, we're not offering any advice on how to do drugs or
oh no, we're not even
any, yeah,
promoting
yeah.
drug
We're
use
even
or
we're not
anything like
promoting it.
that. Like,
We're just
in
talking
fact,
about it.
if you don't already do drugs, as somebody who has dabbled in a lot, I'm telling you, just don't. Like, if it's not like something that's your burning passion, if it's just like a passing curiosity, you probably don't need it. Like, don't, like, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I don't think it's necessary to do psychedelic experiences to have a psychedelic experience.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard of like those like hardcore like yogis, like people that like to do yoga, or those people that just like to meditate. Like I've heard of like some of them saying that like, oh, it's as if like I were on like mushrooms or something. Except it just seems a lot more fun to just like take like a substance and then feel it versus like having to train your mind and body for years to be able to reach that state of like zen or whatever they call it.
Or like enlightenment,
Yeah, like I always thought
nirvana.
it. Yeah, I was like really interested in that. I mean, I'm honestly like interested in it as well. I mean, just to talk a little bit about myself, since we're kind of doing this to like catch up and everything. Yeah, so after high school, I ended up going to a university in the Midwest. I'm not gonna say it here, but I'll tell you, off air and everything. Went there for 4 years. After that, you know what? Everybody knows it already. All my listeners. I went to Creighton in Nebraska.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
no, I remember that.
yeah,
You and Jung Wan went there.
yeah, from Roosevelt. Like we were like the only two. So yeah, went there. I was pre med for all 4 years. I remember I think it was my junior year. It might have been junior or senior year. I would go and shadow a current med student, and like I would also like volunteer like in the hospital and everything. And then I realized that, oh shit, like I'm probably not going to get into med school anytime soon. So like after that, I applied to like a grad school 1 year, only one grad school, didn't get in. After that, I applied into UH's program where I am now, and like I'm currently doing a grad program for neuroscience. So that's why like I thought
Oh,
this
wow.
stuff was like really interesting.
Dang, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and then like
I can see how it relates too.
yeah, because like drugs like just the way it binds to like certain receptors and everything. Like I don't know, it's like really interesting. Like you read about it, like oh it
It's
cannabis
specific.
binds to like the CB1 or CB2 receptor. Depending on what where in the brain or what type of cell it is, and like it has like a retrograde like effect on this like circuitry that causes you to feel this way. It's like one thing to like read about how it works, but it's like a completely different thing to like experience it. So that's why I was like really interested talking about like this subject and everything.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I guess like going back to like what you're doing. So you have your seed. You said that you soak it in water essentially until it starts to like root, and then from there you let it veg out. I guess I'm assuming that's like short for like vegetating
Yeah,
or
during its
something.
vegetative state, the
Vegetative.
vegetative state.
Yeah. So after that you allow it to flower. From the flower, how does that flower on your plant end up into like say a dispensary in like downtown Seattle or something?
So plant gets harvested. Um, it's hung up to dry, and the drying and curing process can take another month to 2 months. And after it's done curing and drying, it's taken down, bucked off the stems, or the nugs themselves, the flower itself, is clipped off the stem, and the stem is discarded. And then the buds themselves get taken to another processing room, and then in there, a group of people will like take the flowers themselves, and any kind of like leaves that don't have trichomes on it, or any like excess foliage on it that kind of doesn't make it look visually appealing, because the visual is a really big selling point. So having it look nice is a really big deal. So we have people like they'll manicure, we call it manicuring. They'll manicure some nugs up, make them like really, pretty looking. So like, if you take some pictures and post it on IG, they make nice pictures. You
Hmm.
know, they make very easy marketing. But then after that, it gets put into or gets taken to another processing room. So trimmed weed goes into bags, gets weighed, goes into another processing room where orders are filled. So we get orders through our email and through our online storefront, and we print those orders out and send them over to the packaging team, and they pretty much put it onto the bottles and all the different packaging that we have ordered from there. So if it's flour, they'll have a scale, and if they have to weigh out, like say one store wants 28ths of 4 different strains, so he has to find those 4 different strains and then do 5/8 each one, so you get 28ths of 4 different strains, and then we'll put the SKU, or like the tracking compatibility, the compliance sticker on it, and that then we manifest a transport order so that the person transporting it, driving it to the store, in case they get pulled over by police for whatever reason, and the police find out that they have cannabis in their vehicle, they won't get in trouble for transporting, and they won't get in trouble for having it on them. Like, it's just like legal paperwork so that our driver doesn't get into trouble. Once they get to the store, they have the store scan and sign the manifest paper, and then they take the packaged weed and put it on their shelves. And then, I can even go in there, anybody can go into that store after that point, and then purchase, tell them, look, we're looking for ECC, or we're looking for, whatever company. And yeah, the bartender will be able to give it to them from there. So from the seed to sale, that's kind of how it goes. Like us at the 502, we'll pop or germinate a bunch of seeds, and then we'll transplant them, and then we'll let them veg, and then we'll transplant them into different pots during their life, depending on how rapid the root growth is. Then they'll get to flower for, 6 to 11 weeks. Then they get harvested, dry hand cure for another 2 weeks to 2 months, depending on the strain and what in other conditions, like how moist the bud was, but I can go on. And then from there, it gets processed and then packaged, delivered, and sold.
Okay. I heard you say that. Oh, you could go on about something. I think it was that the quality thing or something with yeah. Could you go on about
Oh, with
that?
the how like why it takes why it takes between 2 weeks and 2 months. Like some things in cannabis, you'll have crazy like swing periods. Like a process could take between 2 weeks and 2 months because like if you have a plant that I don't know, just for some reason uptook more water than it needed. So when you cut and hang it, there's a lot of moisture inside of it that needs to evaporate, and it takes time. And some plants, because of their cell walls or whatever it is in how the cells form, it's a lot thicker, so moisture evaporates slower from some strains than other strains. So you'll have plants like dry up faster than others, and all these like small little variances,
Okay.
like factors.
Do you guys like process any of the flour to make like concentrates or like edibles or anything like that?
We do a lot of concentrates. Mostly, we've been doing a lot of stuff with solvents like butane, propane. Yeah, mostly on isobutane.
So, oh, okay.
And we also do occasional like things with bubble hash, which is just um stirring weed in ice and water and then filtering that water through a bunch of different like filter screens,
Hmm.
different micron meshes.
And that's just to get like the trichomes out,
Yep.
or like what people like to call keef or whatever.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, that's
But
interesting.
this keef, its quality is a little higher because of just the lack of exposure to contaminants and oxygen mostly.
So
Because keef,
oxygen's actually bad for like say I have weed in a bag. Like would be putting one of those like you know deoxygenating like packets help it out, or like one of those
yeah,
humidity packets or whatever help it out.
yes and no. You don't want to put you want to put something in there that absorbs oxygen, but not so much humidity. Humidity is not too much the problem, not too much of a problem as oxygen is. Like humidity could cause like mold to grow on the product later in life, but that happens very slowly and whatnot. But oxygen, on the other hand, oxygen oxidates cannabinoids, so it kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it degrades it. It kind of like breaks down the molecules into you know something a little more stony and couch locky. Like it's not going to be the same effect as it was at its prime because it's going to be like the THC gets converted into THCA, and the CBNs get and the CBDs get converted into CBGs. These are all like um, abbreviations, but it's like tetrahydrochloride acid, and then cannabidiol and canna. I forget what the G one is. Like it's just these like ridiculously hard to pronounce words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like the stuff that I'm kind of interested in, like the neuropharmacology and everything. Um,
But it is the oxygen does play a big role in converting some of these cannabinoids passively over time.
Oh, okay. How does it work? Do you guys make edibles as well, or like only like concentrates?
We don't do edibles,
Do you know the
just
process of
concentrate.
making them, or like making it so that your body can metabolize it? Because from my understanding is you can't just like get like a flower and eat it. Like you won't feel anything out of it. Like you'll probably just have very bad. You'll just be constipated pretty much, right? Since it's like a high fiber like
Oh yeah.
plant. Like,
It,
do you know the process of which you take the plant and make it into something that is like a consumable?
So that process is known as decarboxylation.
Do you know,
So it's
have you ever, do you know how it works or how you would do it?
it's actually really simple. It's a really fancy word for just like removing like just you're breaking chains and you're breaking bonds in the molecule. I don't know. Chemistry.
Yeah.
I can't explain it, but what you want to do, there's two ways to do it. You can let it age over time, exposure to oxygen, that like oxidating it causes like, or the THC is not active until it becomes THCA. So even if you smoke, if you manage to smoke THC, like if you manage to get THC in a vapor form and smoke it, that doesn't necessarily get you high. When it's ignited, when it's heated up, or when it's oxidized into THCA, that's the psychoactive part. Like that's the part that can actually like get in and get into your brain and start doing stuff. And for the decarboxylating it, taking it into taking like a product, oil or flour, and turning it into something that you can ingest and get high off of it, you either leave it out in the open, exposed to oxygen for a very, very long period of time, or you can heat it up to like 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 to 15 minutes. And that heat, that activation energy, turns a lot of the THC into THCA and CBD into CBDA and all of these other cannabinoids. It kind of like it. I'm not too sure the exact word, but the the term we use is it activates it.
Mhm.
Like these chemicals, if they were in your biology, they wouldn't really do anything in their non-active state. But once you give them enough energy, like once you heat it up or once you let it oxidize, then it becomes active and like your body will you're gonna feel you're gonna get an effect from it. It's gonna bind to your receptors and whatnot.
Mhm. Huh. Yeah, because like also like my understanding is like when you ingest it, you're not getting that like THCA or whatever. Like the enzymes in your stomach and like liver process it into like a 11 like hydroxy like metabolite or like 11 hydroxy like THC or something.
Yeah, it's supposed to be
Yeah.
4 times as potent when you eat it than when you smoke it
Four
because the way
times.
liver because the way that your liver processes it.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me too. Like how, like I guess like ways of like ingestion in a way like affect like how you feel or whatnot. Do you guys also like test your weed for quality or your flowers for quality? Like how does like testing it work? And do you do that?
We don't do testing ourselves. I don't think there's anybody that does in-house testing yet. But in order for you to sell your product on the shelves, it has to be tested first. So for us, we get everything tested.
Oh, okay. So you just outsource it to like a lab and then they just give you like a printout of like what it is. What's a turnaround for them to or for you guys where you guys send them a sample and they test it and you guys get the results back?
Usually about a week or so. Sometimes it
Okay.
takes longer if the lab is backed up. Like most we have to wait is a month.
Mm. And at that point, is your weed already processed and ready for like shipping and selling, or like,
Yep, that's right.
oh, okay, so you guys literally just have like warehouses or something that's just storing it.
Well, the good thing is people smoke a lot of weed, so we're never really sitting on anything.
Hmm.
So we really don't mind waiting. We have a walk-in freezer for emergencies, like if we have to wait longer for a test result,
Oh, what
put it
is
in the freezer.
like how at what point would you freeze it?
Um, it's usually when the smell starts to go.
Mm.
Most times, like if the test is taking longer than a week, we'll put it in the freezer.
How does like the thawing work? Does the thawing like affect like the quality or anything, or
Huh?
not really?
The thawing?
Yeah, I mean, like when you pull it out of the freezer and say are ready to like transport it to the store, or like when it's sitting like on their shelves or whatever. Like, does that change in like temperature? Like, do anything? Does it do anything?
Not too much. As long as you keep the container sealed before you put it in the refrigerator, you don't have like, if there's not a lot of moisture present inside of the container before you seal it when you put it in the freezer, there's not going to be a lot of ice or moisture built up. And when you take it out of the freezer, whatever's moisture, I mean, we really didn't have too much of a problem basically.
Oh, okay,
Like
okay.
it kind of like it comes out, thaws, and it ends up looking the same way as when we put it back in there. As long as we don't like open the containers while we're in there or you know
Mm,
get it too
okay.
exposed.
Um, I'm also kind of curious to know like about the business side of it. Like, how profitable is it for like you or like say you're like the person that owns your like company and everything? Like, it's like how much is a what is like the common I guess like size or like volume that people like to purchase weed in dispensaries, and like how much would you say the profit margin is for like those dispensaries versus like how much like it costs for you guys to make like that volume?
So if you're asking for the markups,
Yeah,
if we sell a product to the dispensary, they're gonna sell it for at least 3 times more or 3.5 times more. Because like a third of that goes to taxes.
a third. Wow. Okay, so like
Yeah, no,
and
we have taxes is like ridiculous. Like taxes is about 30 point something percent.
mhm. Do you know how much tax revenue is generated from all of that and everything?
Um, I want to say like you know hundreds of millions. I
Hmm.
don't know the exact number, but last time I saw it, it was like in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, because I don't know if you heard, but like the idea
Ultimate.
of like decriminalizing like yeah cannabis is like on the table again in Hawaii, and I'm kind of curious to see what'll happen, like if it does become decriminalized or legalized or whatever. Like it'd be really interesting to see like how much like revenue the state, and like that is something that they've been thinking about as of late too. Like now that tourism is pretty much like 1/100th of what it used to be. Like, what
Hmm.
other ways can we have to generate tax revenue? Yeah, that's interesting.
And Hawaii consumes a lot of weed. I mean, last time I was there, I mean, a lot of people I know smoke a lot of weed every day.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. I know of a lot of people that smoke
I
a
mean, my
lot
younger
too.
brother, I don't know if you know my younger brother, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
He goes pretty hard. Yeah, like
Yeah, no, he likes weed.
earlier you said that like you have to tell a doctor that like or that weed is like a better substitute than like a drug. Like, how hard is it to get that like I guess like card or whatever. Like
I mean,
wouldn't that like raise a lot of questions because like oh you're still using a federally like illegal like substance. Like
well, it's actually not too difficult because the doctor that you're referred to get this card usually only gets referrals for the medical card. And
hmm,
as long as you have the paperwork to prove whatever claim that you're making, they'll approve your card.
so you
So
just got to
like
go to the
you
right
say
doctor.
if I were like I mean one of my friends, his girlfriend has a card for menstrual pains, like menstrual cramps.
Is that the most like ridiculous, or I don't know, maybe not ridiculous because that's not the right word, but is that like the most like is that like the weirdest like I guess I don't know what is the word I'm looking for. Is that like the weirdest like not disease.
Diagnosis.
Yeah. A
Um,
reason is that the weirdest reason for getting like a card that you've heard of? Like, I'm sure you've heard of some pretty crazy reasons.
Honestly, like I mean, you'd be surprised, but the most of the reasons I hear are quite understandable. Like majority of them is like, oh, I had ADHD medication, but the weed makes me focus better without the edge, so I like the weed. Or you get people like veterans or like people who've been hurt or like in car crash, they're like, oh, I get back pain all the time, and when I smoke weed, I feel better. So like they get a card for that. I guess like the menstrual pain one stands out to me the most because if you're a female, you can get a card. Because like for some for this because the thing is like if you are a healthy if you're a healthy male, like nothing is wrong with you, you don't need to smoke weed. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot harder because then you don't have like a quote unquote legitimate reason to
Mm-hmm.
need to use cannabis for anything.
Mm-hmm. Hence the recreational like aspect of it, right?
Hmm. But
Okay.
there's a lot of like you can use it. I mean, I guess like the more ridiculous ones is like people who say they have glaucoma but they don't, or like the most ridiculous ones are like people who actually like they're gonna lie, like make a crazy lie about like, oh, I have this,
Like like
you
I
know,
have cancer or something.
yeah, or like or something like, oh, I have this syndrome of the wandering bladder, and like in the night I can't sleep because of this condition, but the weed helps, or when you make up stuff like that, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. But most of the reasons they're kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense, like duh.
Like, oh, I have trouble sleeping at night or something.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
insomnia, smoke weed.
that's
You
crazy.
got problems with your appetite, smoke weed. You got anxiety, smoke weed. Oh, you fell down at work and it hurts all the time, smoke weed. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
panic, smoke weed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have no problems and you exercise every day. You should drink water.
Yeah.
Like that's like that's where I'm like how the bar to get a medical license is like.
It's like really low, like almost non-existent.
I wouldn't say that. You have to just have a medical. You have to have at least one medical problem,
Mm,
like one legitimate medical problem.
mm. Okay. Yeah, you pretty much answered like all the questions I had. Did you want to add anything else, or did you have any questions for me or anything?
Um, how's how'd you get into neuroscience? And like
Uh,
how was Creighton first of all? Like I
Clayton.
heard Nebraska's a party state.
Um, there certainly were a lot of parties up in Nebraska. Like, I mean, Creighton's definitely not like University of Nebraska. Creighton's like, a Jesuit, like a Catholic school, but it was still a fun time, a good time. I definitely like partied a little too much. Like that's why I knew like I wasn't going to get into med school anytime soon. Um, but yeah, like I guess that was like the biggest change is like, being surrounded by water and then being surrounded by land. Like and then experiencing like, four seasons, experiencing snow like for the first time, like snowfall for the first time. Like I've seen snow like, visiting like a mountaintop before, but never like falling or anything. So that was like certainly new. The food is very different in the Midwest as compared to like here or like even the West Coast or anywhere else that I visited. Uh, like food over there is like a lot like heavier. Like everything's like fried in like Crisco, like lard or like butter and stuff. So
Oh
like
wow.
like everything tastes like amazing, but then it's not really the healthiest thing for you. Things are like super cheap there. Like you can get like I learned to love chicken fried steaks, and you can get like
Oh,
you can get like a massive one for like $9. Like we're talking like that's probably the only meal you need to eat all day. Like that's how much food you get. So like that was certainly fun. But like I guess getting into neuroscience, yeah, I guess how it kind of like worked out was I had a hard time. I couldn't get one of the classes that I wanted because like for the graduation requirements, like you needed to take like a course that you need to take like four writing intensive courses, and then like there was like one course that all the bio majors wanted because it like fulfilled like three categories or something. So then like I was just like, oh, I couldn't get that class. So it's like, oh, neuroscience or like neurobiology, that satisfies like two. No, that one satisfied three as well, but then it's just ridiculously hard in comparison to the other one, which was like
I see.
terrestrial ecology, I think was the other one. So it's like, yeah, do you take terrestrial ecology or do you take like neurobiology? And of course, everyone's gonna be like, oh, screw neuro, that sounds hard, super hard and everything. But then I just took it, and then it was always very interesting to me. Like,
So like what has been like the most what's been the most interesting thing that you've learned about neuroscience, or like what's like what have you learned that has helped you out the most? You
for
know,
everyday life,
yeah, because like
um,
I feel like understanding neuroscience is like a good way to understand like how you yourself works, right?
um, believe it or not, like I didn't really learn too much that would help with say everyday life. Um, you definitely learn about like what things you can eat that might help brain function and everything. But like you hear more about like the biology behind it more so than anything else, right? But then like you just start to like experiment with like nootropics or things that are supposed to make your brain like more efficient or just run better. So like a thing that I recently started taking is lion's mane, um, like mushroom extract. Like I don't know how familiar you are with like adaptogenic mushrooms or anything, but
Oh
then
yeah, do you know Paul Stamets?
yeah, he's like a very famous mycologist. Yeah, and
He's
he
out
has like
here in Washington.
yeah, like I hear that he has a lot of like places that he goes to harvest various different types of mushrooms, and everybody's trying to find like all of his spots and everything, especially for the psychedelic varieties.
Hmm.
But yeah, he has like a very popular brand. I think his brand's name is called Host Defense. And like yeah, he has like a multivitamin that's like a whole bunch of like mushrooms. But yeah, lion's mane is the one that's supposed to be really good for like brain function.
Okay,
So
have you know how long have you been using it?
well, it's in my coffee. I'm using this isn't like a sponsorship or anything or an ad, but like it's yeah, well, it's at Costco. It's a layered Hamilton. He's a professional surfer that coincidentally lives in Hawaii. Like he lives on Kauai. He's a big wave surfer. So
I
like
think I've seen it before.
yeah. So in his coffee, there's like mushroom extracts in it. I think his one has lion's mane for like the brain function, cordyceps for the better. It helps with your cardiovascular system. It's so yeah, so cordyceps mushroom and beets are the only two like foods I think you can consume that help with your VO2 max. At least what I've read. And then what are the other ones that's in it? I think chaga. Chaga I think is supposed to help for immune function, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I think it has like those three. But yeah, Paul Stamets's brand has like or like his signature like pill or whatever has like seven different mushroom extracts. So like I'd be curious to see like how what else those other mushrooms would do for me. But like yeah, once I've added it to my routine, like I don't know, I just feel better. And it's also I also have a little bit inside of my multivitamin that I take. It's just the regular Kirkland brand. But if you take the plant-based one, there is a mushroom complex inside the multivitamin.
Oh, that's pretty neat. Have you
Yeah.
noticed any changes since you've used it? Like, or
I mean maybe it's like placebo, but I don't know. I definitely feel better drinking the coffee compared to the say regular coffee. One thing I do notice is that I do produce a lot more like mucus or phlegm in your throat. Like that's why I'm like always clearing my throat and everything. I don't know. Maybe it's just anecdotal or maybe it's from something else, but yeah, it's like one thing I've noticed that happens and everything. But yeah, other than that, like those mushrooms have been working well. At least I think they've been working well.
so what got you into it? Like, where did you hear about it first?
Um,
Like I don't remember it being like a really big mainstream thing,
Mushrooms?
or like
Um,
mushroom supplements.
mushroom supplements. You know, I do listen to the Joe Rogan like podcast every now and then. So that was definitely one way.
Oh, okay.
That was one way. But you also learn about, you know, just as like a former athlete. Not that I like played sports in college or anything, but like when you try to like min max your body, and try to get the most out of it, start looking into like supplements and everything. But like, yeah, I mean, just I remember one day I just went down the rabbit hole and I came across like adaptogenic mushrooms. Like, that's like something that's like not very like cited upon nowadays or like out there, but it's nice to see that it's slowly getting out there.
Hmm.
Do you know GT's kombucha?
Uh, is that the one that comes in the glass bottles?
Yeah, glass bottle. Their most famous flavors trilogy. It's like a multicolored like label on a glass bottle.
Yeah, the synergy ones.
Yeah.
I see
Synergy.
them at the Whole Foods all the time.
Yeah. So they actually make a mushroom version of it, and then if you get the puree tea, um, like yeah, it's a mushroom one. It's like the puree with like some other root. That one tastes like a really good root beer. Like I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll definitely give it a
Yeah,
try. I'm
yeah.
I like the kombucha for them probiotics, those life cultures for the stomach.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for that too. I've also read a lot of things about how like having a healthy like gut microbiome is supposed to help with like brain function as well. What a lot of people don't know is that majority of like your serotonin in the body is actually created in your gut. So like that's kind of interesting, and it just
Hmm.
I think it travels up through the vagus nerve. So that's kind of cool that like you have that like endosymbiosis that actually helps with like your everyday brain function and everything.
Right.
Um,
I've read on one of those kombucha bottles that like there are more there are more like bacteria, like cells of bacteria, protozoa, and other like creatures living in your gut biome than there are cells that make you up.
yeah, it's I think the number is somewhere between 5 to 1 and 10 to 1, at least from what I've
Yeah,
read.
but it's just kind of crazy to think about that most of what makes you you isn't even you.
Well, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize too is that your skin has a lot of bacteria as well.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's a living food web though. Like it's a microbiome that serves a purpose and supports itself. Like if you were to completely strip your skin of all these bacteria, you would be in a way vulnerable to like certain infections.
yeah, like that's like the problem with like those like antibiotic soaps and everything. Like they say that like they're not good since it disrupts the microbiota of like your skin and
It's
everything.
the same thing like how we grow weed nowadays, or like how I'm learning to grow weed now. I used to use like full salts, like full synthetics, like force feed the plant as much as possible,
Hmm.
and like give no shits about like the other critters or organisms living in there.
Hmm.
But when I started learning about organic and like instead of stripping and eliminating that bacteria and making everything super sterile, it's a lot better to just get to know the whole entourage and then figure out, oh, who's the players that I want, like what's the microbes that are beneficial and what's the ones that aren't beneficial, and what does everybody eat, and then let's feed the good ones and starve the bad ones so that we have established colonies of good ones. And I've been learning that like those microbes, I even just bought a book recently. I'll send a link to you later because it's a pretty interesting book. It's not a scientific one. It's a book about microbes that's talking to people who don't have like college educations and whatnot, so that some
Yeah.
people who don't have the background to understand it can at least get an idea of what's going on, because microbes are really important. Like they are
Hmm.
an essential part of everybody's life, and that's like everybody, like plants and animals and everything.
Hmm.
Microbes play such a major role, and we really don't know as much as we should about them.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And like it's interesting that you brought up like the, entourage effect and everything. Like I know I've heard that being used like in like the cannabis industry a lot too. Like a lot of people are saying that they don't necessarily like like pure THC concentrates because they think that they're missing out on some of the terpenes found in the plant that might not necessarily make it into the concentrate. That's kind of interesting too.
My favorite way to describe it or like explain like the entourage or like I don't know. I guess one of my favorite ways to describe it is it's like cooking. Like THC is an ingredient. It's like an apple. You can eat it by itself, but if you can combine it with some other ingredients in like the proper way, it makes the experience more enjoyable. Like you can have an apple and you can have like bread and you can have like cinnamon on the side, or you can have it all together as like an apple pie. Like that's way more enjoyable than just like so it's like you can enjoy the parts that make up the whole, or you can enjoy the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
like that's kind of like how the entourage effect works. Like there's certain terpenes that are found in like other plants and whatnot. Like the easiest example is myrcene, which is also found in mangoes. Like high concentrations are found in mangoes, which is why like why people say like if you eat mango, it makes your higher, makes your high last longer, makes your high more intense
I've never
because it
heard that
contains
before.
myrcene, and myrcene affects your your blood-brain barrier. It makes your membrane more permeable, so it allows more chemicals to pass through. So whatever you feel, it's more intense. Like myrcene's like it intensifies stimulus or stimulations or something like that. But I
That's
mean that's one example. There's a whole bunch of other like terpenes, flavonoids, and um polyphenols that when you smoke weed or when you consume it, they all kind of mix together and they affect how your brain experiences, you know, all the chemicals that you just ingested.
right, right.
Because there's
Yeah,
like when you smoke weed, you got to understand like it's not just THC, like you're ingesting hundreds of chemicals like really quickly. I mean, I'm not saying that it's like a bad thing, but majority of these chemicals, they're cannabinoids. So like they're not found to be harmful to your body. There's just so many of them that are not very researched or very well understood. So, you know, they're kind of there. We just don't know what's going on yet. More research
yeah,
is required. We're collecting
yeah.
data.
I think in like the field of like
Smoke more weed, people.
neuroscience. Sorry, with that?
I don't know. People should smoke more weed so we can get
Yeah.
more data. Like that's.
Well, I mean, yeah, in a controlled like environment.
I mean,
For,
I'm
like
just kidding. I'm not promoting it. Like.
yeah, but like yeah, it's like really interesting. So I have to ask, like, do you have a favorite strain?
Oh yes, I do. I have a list.
A
But right now,
list.
my absolute favorite strain is this. It's a relatively new one called strawberry lemonade.
Mm.
That one. I mean, I'm not. Do you smoke weed, David?
Oh,
Or is that something that you feel
you're gonna
comfortable about
put me on the
saying?
spot.
Or here, oh,
I
you can nod. You can nod.
I've had some experiences with it in states of which it was legal.
Okay.
Yeah, but like yeah, I mean, I've had you know, I think a good amount of experiences with it, you know. So
Because then
yeah,
I'm gonna try to describe it, and like one of the hardest things is to describe it to somebody who like you know
has
is
never done it
attentive. But
before.
I'm gonna go for it anyways.
All
Like
right, go for it.
I like the strawberry lemonade. It's really unique because like for your listeners out there who do enjoy the reefer from time to time, like strawberry lemonade is it's got that gas that is really popular right now that a lot of people enjoy. I personally am getting sick of it because as a grower and as a producer, I like to do new things, but I also have to make sure that it's economically practical. So even if I make something that I like, if the consumers don't like it, then we're not going to run it. If I make
Hmm.
something that I don't like, but the consumer loves it, guess what we're growing?
Yeah,
And so like I
the
get caught
market
into these
dictates everything,
situations where
right?
like exactly. So
Yeah.
I'm growing stuff that I don't like. But anyways, it's got that gas that the bongos in the streets are playing for, but it also has like this unique like creamy like pink lemonade kind of taste to it. Like imagine like pink lemonade Italian cream soda.
Okay, that's like
And
so
then like
interesting that you can like taste different flavors and
mhm.
everything.
I mean, I've smoked a decent amount of it where like that initial taste of like burnt plant and that tar and that, you know, that unsavory sensation, I can ignore that so that I can pay more attention to like the more like subtle like smells and the tastes and flavors. And you know, I mean, over time, like after you smoke it, you kind of get accustomed to like the that normal skunky smell. So what you're really picking up on is the differences between the strains, because like that skunky smell is kind of like if you to have two different strains and give it to somebody who's never like smoked weed before or who doesn't smoke weed normally, they probably would think that they both smell the same. Like I've had times where like I've shown it to like my family members and like I'm trying to explain to them what it smells like or what I'm experiencing, and they're like, it just smells like a skunk. Like they can't tell the difference because they're not like they're not used to it, so they're just kind of getting overwhelmed but by the like the you know the usual smell of it. But getting back to it, strawberry lemonade definitely up there. It's got a really smooth, creamy, like fruity taste, and it's got that kind of gas that explodes in your mouth that you know people is looking for. And then after that would probably be like Kush mints, and then cookies and cream. They're
I,
just like
I don't think I've ever heard of like these strains before. Like, I mean,
these are all.
I only really hear about, the real mainstream ones like Girl Scout cookies is what I hear a lot of people on the street say,
Mhm.
Gorilla Glue, Sour Diesel and stuff. Like, I mean, at least in Hawaii, that's all I ever hear. Not that I'm in the scene or anything, but like that's like
No, but that
mainly what
was
I hear.
like before I moved out here and like a couple years after I moved out here, that was like really big in the Hawaii scene. Like that, I mean, before I moved out here, Girl Scout cookies was definitely like one of my favorite strains. But like these are all newer strains. The one of the dudes that I work for, he's a pheno hunter, or
Mhm.
he's a cultivar hunter for a couple of new seed, like pretty popular seed companies. One of them is Soulfire and the other one is Exotic Genetic Mike. But anytime these two breeders do like an experiment and they want to like they want some they if anytime they do a breeding experiment and they don't want to do the work themselves of like popping all the seeds and like picking through the good ones and the bad ones so that they can find like a good plant that you can take cuttings off of, because even if you create seeds, like you cross two strains together, the seeds that come out, they're all not going to be the same. They're going to be kind of similar, but some strains will have more resin or I mean, not some strains, but some seeds will have more resin content, or one of them might have nicer bud structure, or one of them might have, better smell, or, nicer look. They'll have their own different like traits, kind of like, when human beings have children, like more than one child, like these children, they all kind of look like each other, but there's differences between them. Same thing
Mhm.
with the seeds, and you can have hundreds of thousands of seeds to sort through. So these two guys, they outsource that work. So they have a handful of people like me and the guy that I work for that we pop seeds and we veg and flower them, and we pick out the ones that are like the best ones, or like the ones that we feel are the best, and we return cuts back to them, and then we get royalties off of that, or we work out deals like a side hustle.
I
And
see.
so on top of that too, we also get access to brand new strains. Like these strains did not exist until like now, and we get to test them out to see if we're gonna continue making it, or if we're gonna like if that strain's story, or if that strain's history just stops there. So it's kind of cool that we're kind of like get to work with like brand new strains, and then we're making strains that they don't have never existed before. It's kind
Yeah.
of fun.
And I feel like
And plus
name
the best part is like no one really knows about it, and no one really needs to know a whole lot about it.
yeah. Yeah, and I feel like the naming scheme is like so interesting too. It's like you have something like Skywalker or something. It's like, wow, something straight out of like Star Wars or something.
Vader
or
OG.
like Northern Lights or something like these.
We've
Like,
even got one called North Fire Cookies.
and that's like a
Oh,
cross between.
there's one that I've come across called Lumpy Space Princess.
I think I saw that in a dispensary the last time I was up in Seattle, just to check it out and everything.
It's
Because
a
it,
adventure
like, even if you
time.
don't purchase anything, just visiting it is like an experience in itself, right? Like, at
Oh
least in
yeah,
my
definitely.
opinion,
Like
like.
the store itself, it resembles like it kind of reminds me of a jewelry store in a way, because like everything is on display. Like you can see everything that's for sale, but you're not really allowed to touch anything, and you got to provide identification before you're handed anything.
Mm-hmm.
And like the prices are kind of like up there too, but it really is an experience because it's a novel. It really is novel. Like you walk in there and it's almost overwhelming. Like the first time I moved out here and went to dispensary, I was like, damn, there's a lot of companies growing weed. Like there's so many different like brands on the shelves, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like all these different products. I mean, I don't know how your experience was, but the first time when I was like 21 out here, oh, like almost 5 years ago, I was just blown away because I had never seen anything like that before. I just come from Hawaii, so
Right,
I just
right.
thought that was incredible. Like
Yeah,
they had everything.
my first time stepping foot in a dispensary was in 2016. So yeah, shortly after you moved out there. Like, I didn't know you were out there. I would have hit you up for sure. But then like, yeah, just walking in, because like a lot of places have like a area before like the room that you see all the products and stuff, kind of where they check your ID, make sure you're 21 and everything.
Hmm.
Like, yeah,
Like a
like,
security checkpoint.
yeah, there's like a security yeah, thing, and then after that you kind of go in, you browse and everything. um yeah, I guess, yeah, the first one I went to was actually out in Colorado. And like, I feel like, yeah, they're a little different in Colorado versus like Seattle.
How is it like in Colorado? I still haven't been out there yet.
um well, the all of the dispensaries that I went to had like a waiting area before like the product, whatever. So like, yeah, there was like a room before you see like all the products and everything. And I don't know if that's like, maybe that's like the law they have or something, or like, they have to have like, that type of like building for it or something. uh huh. I mean, I'm not like experienced enough to know to like, I noticed that there's different like products. There's for sure different products like in Colorado versus like Seattle. Um, like the real big things that I used to hear about from my friends that live in the area are like, things called like Chiba Chews, but like, or like they have a lot of like different brand name stuff, or what they would call brand name stuff that isn't in Seattle dispensaries.
Hmm.
Yeah, like, I guess that's like the best way like I could like describe it.
So
It's
like
just
their own
different
brand.
products. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
just
because
very
like
different
basically they're
brands.
kind of like they can only do business within the state. It's hard for them to like cross state lines. They got to jump through a lot of like whole loops and
Yeah,
stuff.
like some people swear that like Colorado weed is like the place to go if you want to get good weed, like even better than Seattle. I don't know. I'm not experienced enough to know the difference. So
I mean, of course, I could say a lot. I mean, I could say,
it's probably like a
but
pride thing, right? Like,
yeah, I,
yeah.
I I don't believe that it's the area that grows good weed. It's the individual that grows good weed, and wherever they decide to move to, that place has good weed.
Because I think, was Denver the first or Colorado the first state to legalize recreational use?
Um, I think so. It was either Colorado or Washington.
Yeah.
The West Coast and Colorado were like some of the first states that I knew of that had recreational.
hmm Do you like think there's a big difference between like sativas and indicas?
Yes,
Could you
I
explain
do.
the difference to like in general for the listeners?
So for me personally, sativa and indica, I don't use that to like I don't attach them and I don't relate them to strain names because I think it's more dependent on like what people are using to grow. Like it depends on like the grow, like what was the plant being fed and how the plant was being treated. And I mean, genetics do play a little role, but I've had some occasions where a strain that's known to be indica dominant possessed like possessed more sativa dominant strains, or I've had like sativa strains that are grown by other people have the same effect as like indica strains, just the way that they
Mm.
grow it. But an indica strain is basically saying something that's got a more sedative, a more anti-inflammatory, and a more like couch lock and stoned kind of effect. Like it's the weed that you smoke when you're recovering or after a long day or if you have problems sleeping. Like you look for something indica. And it, on the other hand, for sativa, that's like it's like a stimulant. It's almost like a stimulant because like you still get some body relaxation and like like some. I mean, some people it aggravates it, but you still get some like mental relief. But more than anything, like with sativa strains, you'll notice like your introspectiveness or your inner monologue either gets louder or get just takes off. Like you start having like more thoughts, or you might have more creative thoughts or more abstract thoughts. But it's basically like a sativa high is more cerebral. Like things are happening in your head more, and like it's not necessarily something that you can sleep. I mean, you can probably sleep on it, but it's not, you know, not like as easy as you would on an indica strain where things just kind of slow down and stop. Like sativa kind of like it's a little stimulating.
And is that just because of the different cannabinoids, or like, maybe the different like terpenes and other phenols
Both.
and stuff in it? It's both. Okay.
Hmm.
I always thought like it was just like the species like difference or whatever.
Well, it's all the same species. It's, I mean, if you're to look at the whole classification, all the way to the species, it's all identical between different strains. It's just the same thing as like Asian, you know, European, or you know, it's the different races between the species, like the
Mm.
cultivars, or
Mm.
if that's an adequate metaphor.
Or maybe like a breed of dog, like they're all the same
Yeah,
dog or
yeah,
something, but a German Shepherd is very different from, say, like a Pomeranian or something.
exactly. But they're
Yeah.
both dogs.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Because I always thought it was like, the genus was like cannabis, and then, indica or cannabis, like sativa or something.
Well, there's indica, sativa, and ruderalis.
What is that third one? Like, nobody really talks too much about this third one. That's kind of interesting.
The ruderalis is actually a really interesting strain. It's underrated and doesn't get a whole lot of attention because the original ruderalis strains, they're really shitty at getting you high, but they're really good at growing in almost any climate. They have really strong branches. The nug structure is usually like tight and compact, and the plants don't necessarily stretch or grow very tall. So for indoor environments, it's really manageable. And also, I believe it's the ruderalis strains that have the autoflower capability, or that's where autoflower plants come from. Because in ruderalis, their flowering is based on an internal time clock, not external stimulus.
Mm.
So, like with the other plants, like I was saying earlier, like the photo period is what triggers the hormones to, or what triggers the hormone difference is the phyto period is what causes the plant to either produce veg hormones or flower hormones. In ruderalis, it's a timing thing. So once it reaches a certain age, it'll start producing flowering hormones. And so over the years, majority of growers, they will skip the ruderalis, but really smart, really clever breeders have been using ruderalis to introduce its its benefits. So like its branch structure, the nug structure, the resistance to climates, the resistance to, it's basically, it's a really hardy plant, and sativa and indica are really finicky plants. And on top of that, with ruderalis being able to have that autoflower thing, you can have, if you're a clever breeder, you can cross the strains where you can get like terpenes and, you know, like the high or the, you know, the psychoactive effect from your favorite sativa or indica strains, cross those together. And if you wanted to do the autoflower thing, or if you wanted the plant to be more structurally sound, you could cross it back with the ruderalis, and it'll still be kind of the same strain. It may not be as potent, but the plant itself for the grower will be easier to grow, and you'll probably get higher yields. And you know, it's basically ruderalis plants. You wouldn't smoke a pure ruderalis plant, but for a grower or a breeder, a ruderalis plant might help in like breeding projects, or it might help in a commercial setting where, you know, I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about. I've been talking with my people that I work with, because the way that medical people grow weed and the way that, you know, black market has been growing weed, it just won't work. It won't work in a commercial setting because the overheads are usually too high, and they're way too inconsistent, because there's no controls or no regulations. So people, like, if they're not business oriented, if they're just growing weed to make the money, then they're not really focusing on like overheads and expenses. Like, I've seen some people like just, you know, waste money because they're making a lot of money doing, you know, growing weed and doing their thing. But anyways, commercially, the way that most people, the conventional way of growing weed does not work commercially because it's too inconsistent. The overheads are crazy, and the strains, there's inconsistency in like the turnovers. Like, you can't, like, what would be ideal is if you just had, you know, oh, every 2 weeks these plants go through veg, like, you know, if you have a specific schedule that you can follow until the end of time, that would be great, because you have a lot of control and you can make accurate projections, because since we already know how much we can produce per 4x4, you know, canopy space, you can just do the math to figure out like, oh, how much you're going to produce with the maximum space that you have. And the only problem is that the time it takes you to produce that amount is never the same. But if you could lock that down, then you can know, oh, how much you're going to produce, when you're going to produce it, how long it takes to produce it, how long it takes to sell it, and how much you're going to sell it for. So you can basically predict your business's future more accurately. But because there's a lot of like, you know, differences, and there's a lot of like fluctuations, and there's a lot of stuff that's harder to control with the conventional way of growing weed, I like the idea that, you know, ruderalis and being able to like, you know, one one thing where like you have like a certain set of lights or a room set up in your facility that grows test strains, like new flavors, like what's going to be the new stuff that you're going to test in the market with limited drops or limited releases to see, you know, what people like. And before you integrate it into your commercial grow, you cross that with the ruderalis strains or with the auto flowering strains. So you find out, basically, you find out for the new flavors, you find out what the people like of the new stuff, and then you cross it with autoflower so that you can fit it into your schedule. So you can cycle through new flavors and keep the old winners while staying on a same schedule, I guess. But I guess like I'm still working on the idea, and I have to refine it a lot, and I'm in the process of, you know, properly educating myself, because like I slacked off on that for a hot minute. It's important.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something I'm thinking about, because we're a legal 502 company, and eventually this will become federally legal. And if we're producing on a commercial or an industrial level, we have to make sure that it's profitable. And so in order to do that, the best ways to do it is, how do we minimize, you know, the plus or minuses, the gives and takes? How do we you know, minimize the margin of error or the margin of change? And how do we lower our overhead as much as possible while maximizing our quality and our yield. Like that's
Mm,
because like if we can produce the highest quality for the cheapest amount and consistently, that's going to be a really hard thing to compete in a commercial sense. So like say if someone else can produce high quality bud, maybe better than ours, but their overhead is greater than ours, we don't have to do much to compete because over time, since we're able to continuously undercut them, if there's changes in the market or if something happens, our company will be more resilient because our profit margins are larger. We can take bigger hits. But an opponent who may be producing a higher quality but for a higher cost may not be able to survive such market fluctuations. They may phase out, but our company will still be around.
so
So it's trying to
consistency
find that,
matters.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
it's just trying to find that like sweet spot where you can
Mm,
produce the highest quality for the cheapest amount. And if you can do that for cheaper than your competition, then you know you're chilling. Like you're just kind of you're just moving along at that point.
mm, okay. Oh, did you have any other questions for me or anything?
Um, when you coming up to Washington, you should take a tour.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'd love that. I've never been to like a grow operation before. Um, maybe later this year. We'll see how everything goes with like the pandemic and everything, and like see where I am like after. Because like okay, so right now I'm like finishing up my thesis, so like I have to finish that first, and then after that I'll be more or less free. I just have to figure out like yeah what I'm gonna be doing for money in the meantime until like me getting into med school or something. So I
What
mean,
about this podcast? And I heard in a couple of other because I just watched all the podcasts. I missed um the the physical therapist one and the potential Omaha
candidate.
mayoral
Yeah.
candidate. I hadn't listened to those ones, but I did listen to the Micah Garces one and the Richie Gabriz and the Tiffany Tang ones because like those are names that I'm kind of familiar with. So I was like, I haven't heard these voices in
Mm.
forever, so I heard those ones. But what was the point that I was making here? My bad. I'm sorry. It's been I mean, it's been a long day.
No, don't worry about it. Like
I'm a little
I'm honestly a
spongy.
little mentally slow today too.
But how has COVID been for? Oh yeah, no, I remember now. Like I heard you were talking about like you have a YouTube channel and like
Oh,
I guess my question is like
I'm
you're
going to
doing your
like
thesis thing, but I'm curious like where do you see your podcast going and where do you see your YouTube thing going? Because like I think
well,
school is important, but I really like the the novelty and the ability to make something new from like the podcast and the YouTube idea. You know, it's like you're creating stuff.
yeah. I
Like
mean,
there's more potential.
no, yeah, definitely. So like I'm trying to figure out how to get my podcast onto YouTube. So like if any of my listeners want to help out or you know you want to help out with that, that'd be great. Right now I'm going back and forth with like a friend, like trying to make like a opening theme song or jingle or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, preferably something, you know, a little bit longer, more of like an intro rather than just like, you know, like a 1 or 2 second thing. But yeah, right now a lot of people want it on YouTube since like, you know, not everybody has Spotify. Like right now this podcast is only on Spotify, Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts and like, you know, a few of those like other apps that like I don't know who's using. But this podcast is doing pretty well. Like so Spotify gives you like analytics, like it tells you like how many listeners you have and everything. So that's pretty
Hmm.
cool. Like it says that my audience is like a solid like 32 right now. So that's like a class. Like it'd be cool at the end of the year, you know, that like, you know, doubles or more. Like it'd be
I
cool
mean,
if it,
that's pretty decent. You've only been out for like a month or so, so that's like a
yeah,
new
like
follower every day.
yeah. So like I mean, if it grows into something like if this can become like my job where like I can just do this up until med school and do this while I'm in med school for like you know money on the side, that'd be great. But yeah, like the first step the first thing I think I want to do is like figure out the whole YouTube situation so I can get more listeners. Um, Once that's up and running, I'll probably do like a giveaway with Michael and Richie. Like I talked to like Michael about it, so that'd be kind of
That'd be
cool.
dope.
Yeah, just to help promote their product and everything, their like brand and whatnot. Try to get my YouTube channel up and running and stuff. But yeah, like because I
So
don't want to
I
just
should send you some shirts and some hats.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that'd be cool, like some merch, but that's like way down the line. But yeah, right now it's just like, getting the YouTube thing up and running and trying to figure out like how am I gonna like post it there? Like I don't want to just post like this raw like Skype or Zoom, call into like, YouTube or
Like how,
whatnot.
like what format are you gonna edit it into?
Yeah, so like what I figured is like I'll just have like a still, in like the middle of the screen and just have like the voices like playing in the background, whatnot. So like, it's not something people can like necessarily watch, at least initially. And then, from there, try to figure out, how I'm going to run things. Like it'd be cool to be able to like have like a podcast studio or something where I can have like guests in person. Because like, um, yeah, January is kind of hard. Like finding guests in January is rough because like everybody's busy in January. I don't know. But like, yeah, it'd be I mean, I do have people that want to be on my podcast, but I want them in person. Like I already know that like doing it over Skype or like Zoom is not going to work.
I see.
Yeah. And
It's like
especially
it's these conversations that it'll be better. It'll make for better content if you guys are able to be in person to like
mhm,
play off of each other. Is that what you mean?
yeah, like in person. I mean, of course, like any in-person communication is always going to be better than like, say talking over the phone or like talking over like FaceTime or Skype or something, right? So like, yeah, so like first step right now is like, yeah, you figure out this YouTube thing, figure out how I'm gonna get the podcast onto YouTube and upload it and everything. And from there, like, see where it goes. Just continue to have like friends on, like, the way I see it is like all of my friends are doing something interesting. Like it'd be cool to have every single one of my friends on. Maybe not a few, but
I mean, I kind of like that idea though. Like that's why I listened into your other podcast because it's cool to see what everyone's doing. It's like you said, it has been 10 years, and for
mhm,
someone like me, as soon as I graduated, I just went off and did my own thing. Like I wasn't waiting. Like I just dipped off. And
yeah.
so
So
I really don't know what's been happening with
mhm.
all the high school guys and gals, and I don't really know what's been going on the island.
Yeah, it's like I figured, yeah, just you just gotta spread like good vibes out into like the world or like the internet. If people enjoy like the content, they'll continue to follow and listen. And if not, there's like a million other podcasts or like music or something that people can listen to. I don't know. To me, like I don't really care who's listening or not. Like it was just really nice to hear like some feedback of like people saying like, oh, I'd love to listen to your podcast, but could you make it more accessible by putting it on like YouTube or something? Like, that'd be kind of cool. But like,
Hmm.
yeah, at the end of the day, I'm not really doing this for like, trying to get this to take off or anything. I'm just doing it for my own enjoyment. It's an excuse to me to catch up with old friends, really.
Nah, it was a great excuse too. Like when you hit me up about that, like I was actually pretty surprised because when I got that little chat bubble on my phone, I didn't recognize your face at first. So I was like, "Who the heck's this guy?"
Yeah.
And then I clicked on it. I was like, "Oh snap, it's David."
Yeah, dude,
Tell
you'd
me
be
about the podcast.
surprised. Like, not that many people recognize me out in the street nowadays. Like, I'll see like old high school classmates and stuff, and I'll like wonder, I wonder if they know it's me. But like a lot of people don't like, recognize me and stuff.
I
It's
mean,
kind of funny.
you definitely look more solid, like stronger and stocky. I'm
Oh
trying
my
to find
God.
him. You look healthy.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. Like, I just had like a doctor's appointment the other day, and then that's like, yeah, what my doctor said. It was like, yeah, at least you look healthy. Like, tell that, I'm working out a lot and lifting weights a lot. Like, yeah, my schedule's pretty crazy. Like when, weather permitting, like what I do, like I'll just give you like a rundown of my day and everything. What I do is like I wake up, I usually like, make like a cup of coffee or two or three and like a Keurig. Yeah. Then from there, like the first thing I'll do is like I'll work out, and like my workouts run about like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Like,
Dang.
yeah. So like I do like right now I'm doing a 4 day split. So it's like chest, then back, then leg. Oh no, chest, back, shoulders, and legs. And I just keep cycling through like no rest days. Like yesterday was the first rest day I took in 4 months,
Oh,
maybe
jeez.
longer. So yeah, so I'll work out in the morning. After that, I'll like make my protein shake or make like a brunch or something, and then from there, like I'll be working on like my grad student work and whatnot. Like just right now, it's just research and writing, so it's like a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and then from then, it usually brings me up until about dinner time or so, and then from there, eat dinner, like make dinner, clean up and everything, eat, yeah, clean up, and then what I like to do, like around 9:30, 10 o'clock or so, is like go on a run. So what I do is like I'll run about 5 miles or so, like 4 or 5 miles. But I haven't been able to run since like it's been raining so often.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so it's been like a month since I last ran because it just rains every night. Like it's crazy. So
Definitely rain
that's probably
winters.
why I look bulkier now versus like what I would normally look like. But yeah, like that's like my days now. I run and lift. Like I think they're both important.
That no, I mean that's pretty good. Like we at some of the grows we recently started to, like I've said earlier, we switched over to the automated watering.
Hmm.
So recently I've been having some days off because it used to be like every single day I have to water or transplant or do something. But
Yeah.
we're starting to automate more and more things. So I'm finding myself with more days off in the week, like days off that I've never had in like 3 or 4 years. And so I'm
Hmm.
like sitting here like, what do I
What?
do now? So I've
Yeah.
been getting into that's why I've been getting into cooking because like I don't know if you remember, but I was small in
Yeah.
high school, like
Hmm.
just small in every
Hmm.
way possible. So I'm like, all right, well, I've got money, I've got time, I'm just gonna eat. And in the beginning, I was like eating out, and I was like, this is very unpractical. I can't eat out 3 meals a day. Like this is not gonna work out. So started
Hmm.
cooking and stuff. But point is, I've been trying to exercise some more too, and like get into like fitness and just like trying to get back into health or back into shape because like that's uh that's a really important thing to avoid future misfortunes or like
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I want
definitely.
to be 50 and running. I don't want to be 50 and like dying.
Yeah. Well, dude, my goal is like to still be lifting and running when I'm like 80. So, I mean,
And it's possible too.
yeah, like that's
Yeah,
my
so I
goal.
guess what I'm saying is like I think it's really badass that like, that's a pretty good day. Like you get to exercise, you have some time to work on your thesis and like I mean
Yeah.
that's fucking all right.
And then like this
I'm not
podcast, I
trying to
kind of like sprinkle in, whenever I want or whenever I can schedule with people. Like, because honestly, like this is how I'd want to spend like my free time, just talking with friends. It's like why not like do something I enjoy, and then like I think there's a lot of value in the conversations I have with friends, like on and off like podcasts. So it's like, and like I enjoy listening to them again. So it's like, if I enjoy listening to them again, I'm sure like there's somebody out there that's going to enjoy like listening to it for the first time or whatnot. So
right?
I mean, yeah, like
I mean, there's always gonna be depending on well, I guess depending on some people, but most conversations I have like that go on like solid conversations, there's always a lot to glean from it. There's always a lot to
mhm,
learn and like if it's a good conversation, and by good I don't mean like oh we talk about good things and I agree with this person all the time, but a good conversation like there were certain things that were disagreed upon and then a debate was held and then sides were like those kind of
mhm,
conversations I really do enjoy like being a part of and like hearing those conversations because a lot a lot of epiphanies and revelations can be like drawn from that and most times when I'm like talking with people or interacting with people, my main goal, or like, yeah, like under like beneath like everything, like my main goal whenever I interact with another human being is to try to learn something that'll help me survive better in the future. And if I'm
Mm,
able to do that, try to like share something that'll help them in the future, like, whether it's directly or indirectly.
mhm.
Like
Yeah, like
I tend to use a lot of metaphors.
no,
It gets confusing.
I totally agree, man. I mean, like, I think like people are like the greatest like untapped resource in like everybody's
Hmm.
lives. Like,
It's
I
like
know,
cheap school.
yeah, like maybe it's because like I'm typically more extroverted and everything, but like I don't know, like I just get a whole bunch of like energy talking to like people, especially people that I like like friends.
I
It's
appreciate
like
it, man.
and like you said earlier, it's like free education. Like a lot of people think education's only school or or like only like a class or something. But like, you taught me a lot of things about like, just general planting of like anything really. Like things I didn't really think about before. Like I'll be honest, like, I do have like a small little garden right now, just like herbs and stuff, but like I don't think about like how I'm watering it. I honestly just dump water on top of it. I'm like, oh, that's probably pretty good. So like, I learned that in like the first 5 minutes of like
Hmm.
this conversation.
You'll start to notice some differences, and pay attention to how much you water, like
Hmm.
overwatering, underwatering, and like try to let it dry out. Like
Hmm.
wait until like you see, and this you also have to be very attentive, but wait until like you start to see like the first signs of like the plant being thirsty. And there's a book that my friend is reading, and this is why like I mentioned that, because someone like me, I'm starting to like I'm involved in things where it requires like certain knowledge that I don't have. But I'm lucky, and I'm really blessed, and I'm really fortunate, and like the people that I have in my life, I am forever like grateful for everybody that's been a part of my life, because I've been
Hmm.
given some really good opportunities. But the people that I meet, they know the things that I need to know in order for me to accomplish like my jobs, or like to fulfill my responsibilities. And I'm fortunate enough to have a good relationship with these people, where when I come across something that I don't know that I need to know, I can ask them. And like they have like formal education, like they have degrees and whatnot. And since I'm good friends with them, they're sharing the knowledge that they had like purchased with me, someone who, didn't really get the whole college like opportunity. And like
Hmm.
it's just like, I don't know, I just was really underprepared, and like had no idea about like financial aid, and like the whole, I mean, like finances, like my family was not rich at all.
Hmm. Yeah.
But
Like,
I'm thankful that I got people like that that I can rely on to like learn a lot of stuff.
yeah,
And
that's
like
like,
I have people like you, like if I ever have questions
oh,
about like mental health or like neuroscience, guess who I'm calling now?
yeah, that's funny because like I actually do have experience working in a psychiatric hospital. So it's funny that you brought up mental health there. But like yeah, I totally agree. And what was I going with this thought? Like yeah, you definitely should try to learn as much as you can from like other people. Because like what a lot of people don't realize is that everybody has like a life outside of the time that you're with somebody. And like I don't know, it's like there's so much about people you don't know. Like I'm pretty sure my relationship with like one of our friends from like high school is very different from your relationship to that person or with that person, right? And I
Absolutely.
yeah, like absolutely. So it's like, you know, why not in a sense like leverage your like relationships to either gain something, gain more knowledge for yourself, and like in a way that helps them too because it's just an exchange of like information.
Hmm.
And
And the
yeah.
way I see it too, like as it is right now, I feel like it's impossible for a single human being to be 100% like knowledgeable and self-sufficient. Like you're gonna need to rely on other people, and on top of that, like you may be good at something, someone else may be good at something else. Those two things can, those two things can like intermingle and create some new things. But what really needs to happen before that can occur is like, you know, communication and the sharing of knowledge. Like, and another thing too, the cool thing about having conversations with people who have experience or education is you get to have that same, or not really the same, but you get to have that kind of like experience or that knowledge without having to spend as much time as that individual. Like if you, it's kind of like it's in a way it's like being split into multiple people. Like for example, my I think I like to measure my intelligence based on like how how smart or how well rounded like my main group of people are. Like the people I interact
Mm,
with the most, like that's where I like gauge my intelligence or like my shared knowledge. Because then at any time that I don't know something that I know one of my friends know, I'll call them up, and within a few moments, I will know that bit of information, and I'll have it stashed away.
mm. Yeah,
You know,
that's like very wise, I feel like. Like I feel like a lot of like our peers and just people in general in the 20s are so dead set on like wanting to live life all by themselves. Like I mean,
hmm
I'll admit, like I'm pretty guilty of it at times too. Like,
oh, me too. I moved out here by my kind of by myself,
mhm, like,
but
like I mean, I'm pretty much moved out of like home, but I am like renting a room in like my auntie's place. So I mean, it's not like it's still like I'm living with family, but I'm not since I have like my own
you're like
schedule and everything.
paying rent and everything
Yeah,
too.
yeah, and then it's like she doesn't live here. She lives on the Big Island, so it's just like it's like the family house essentially. So it's just me living with like a bunch of cousins, and
Oh,
like
that's
we
cute.
all. Well, I mean, like yeah. So it's pretty much like we're just sharing like a house, but it's like I don't know. It's definitely an experience, to say the least. Like in a way, in a sense, being out on your own, like it feels great.
Yeah, that little bit of freedom where like you can wake up knowing that no one tells you what to do. Like whatever you do, it's all on you.
Yeah,
Like
like
it's like freedom.
yeah, the freedom is definitely nice. Like, but yeah, at least I guess going back to it, but like yeah, I kind of agree with that whole like I think you are the average of like the five people you spend the most time with.
hmm
Yeah, that's what a
Oh,
lot of people say
definitely.
and stuff. So
It's like has to do with influence too, and like mirror neurons, something new that I've been learning about. Because like I'm becoming more aware of who I spend time on,
mhm.
and like what happens to like how I think and like how I behave after interactions. Because I've noticed that like with some people in my life and certain events that I have, like after these interactions, my behavior and like my thought patterns are a little different.
Mhm.
And it's usually after like really intense emotional experiences or like after like really deep intellectual talks, or sometimes it's just like really most times it has to do with like a lot of adrenaline.
Mhm.
But where was I going with this talk? uh yeah, I guess the point of it is like I'm just being more careful about who I'm spending time on, so that I can avoid you know going through experiences that end up where I end up picking up bad behaviors or
Mm,
habits that are detrimental to my long-term
mhm.
success and long-term like survivability. So I'm trying to be careful with like who I surround myself with.
That's like super funny because like in a way like I'm kind of the opposite. Like I'll give anybody like the time of day if they want to sit down and have a conversation.
I mean,
Like
I mean, definitely. I'm not sorry. I'm not gonna be that strict, but like, I'm pretty critical about like, you know, the substance of the interaction and like the outcomes and the consequences. Like,
mhm,
I'm really like concerned about like what's the results of like interactions.
mhm. Oh, I
'Cause
mean, yeah, that's
I feel like
fair.
that's something that like you're not really taught a whole lot, and like
Mhm.
there's no solid reference or authority on like consequences and behaviors and stuff like that. So I'm kind of just something I'm more aware of.
No, I mean, I think that's a very fair like way of like living your life. Because like there's certainly times I'll have a conversation with somebody who's like, oh damn, that was like a waste of like 2 hours of my life or something. Or like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I like to like go into conversations thinking that, oh, this person has something to teach me. Like I'm very optimistic about it. And like, sometimes I'm proven wrong, but like I won't let that, in a sense, like change the way I interact with other people. I don't know. That's just me. It's also because like I feel like I know who I am. I feel like I've always known who I was. Like, and I'm not saying that, I think you don't know who you are, but
Oh
it's
no,
like, yeah, I don't know. It's like I can have like the negative experiences and whatnot, and like I'll just take it as like, oh, that was, thanks for the experience, and move on at that point. At least that's the way I like to live like my life. Like I don't know, I like meeting people. Like, I'll talk to strangers like in grocery stores if like they're talking or they want to talk.
hmm
Like yeah,
I
there are a
mean,
lot.
I'm definitely open to conversations like that. Like I don't go into interactions with the expectation, but it's afterwards when I reflect on it and analyze it is when I start like being a little more critical or a little more skeptical.
Oh no, yeah. I mean that's fair. Like I think that's something that's
It's like
like
I'm definitely open to like conversations.
yeah.
Like that's where like opportunity for life and stuff to happen.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like if I give an opportunity to something and the end result is not something that I want to repeat again, then chances are I'm gonna avoid that interaction again.
Oh yeah, that's fair. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
I
okay.
guess that's what I meant because like
Oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
because I
So
agree and I understand what you're
mhm.
saying too, but then it made me realize like maybe I misstated what I was saying.
Oh yeah, okay. No, like, I mean what you're
Yeah,
saying totally makes sense now. Like I think like, reflection, like self-reflection in, everything in your life, like I think it's something that like we as a society don't put enough emphasis on. The self-reflection, like thinking
that or I
about
don't remember like being taught like or I mean I only started I mean honestly I only started reflecting more because like I've seen on like those TikTok posts or like like random YouTube video posts about how to live a better life or stuff like
mhm.
that like things to improve your experience or stuff like that and out of curiosity I'll read that and like interest like healthy introspection and stuff like that always pops up so I'm like oh okay that'd be cool it'd be really cool if I had known this when I was younger but I know it now.
Oh, I think that's just part of the experience at the same time too. Like maybe sometimes you have to go through adversity to, in a sense, become like a better person. Like I'm sure you and
Yeah.
I both know like very privileged people, in the past. And it's like,
Oh,
and then like I'll reconnect with them, nowadays and stuff. And it's like, wow, you're exactly the same person you were when you were in high school. And you still subscribe to like the same type of drama and same type of like, BS, for lack of a better term. And it's like, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's like, I totally understand it. If there's nothing in your life that's forcing you to change your like way of thinking or your way of life, nothing's gonna happen, right? And it's
mhm.
like, you made it to like 26, going on 27 years old already. So it's probably working for you. And it's like, I know I might think I don't know. Like I might not want to be around you, but you I'm glad that those people can find people that want to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like
I
a
mean,
good
they'll find
place.
their own niche, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like I have no intention of going to that 10-year reunion. I don't even think we're gonna have a 10-year reunion, to be
I
honest.
mean, honestly, I was kind of like thinking about going there just to check it out and not really saying anything. Like if people ask me questions about myself, keep it just surface. But
Yeah.
really, really like see like where everyone else. Honestly, like that's what I was kind of looking forward to the reunion because I haven't seen any of y'all for at least a decade now. So
hmm
I'm super curious as to like, oh, what happened to everybody?
Well, I mean, I feel like our generation has it easier than like past generations in the sense of like, we all have like social media in a sense, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, so I mean, if I cared enough, oh wow, it just makes me sound heartless, but like, if I care enough about you, like, I'll definitely like, hit you up, like, say, oh hey, how's it going, man? But then like people like you just fall off of the place of like the face of the planet. So it's like,
Well,
well,
that's
I
kind of
can't.
why I had a hard time reconnecting with other people because, like, for the past like 5 years or so, like almost every day I just been working, like trying to
Mm,
like network with people, trying to get opportunities, and then once I started getting into the gardens, like to keep to keep the money coming in, to keep the plants going, you really don't have any time off. Like every day that you spend away from the garden, you risk ruining the crop or you risk, like losing all on your investment in it. So it
mm,
really it like takes over a whole lot of your time. So like I was kind of under the assumption like, you know, I didn't go to college. I barely got through high school and I'm doing all this work. I can only imagine like the rest of my other classmates who were a little more academically successful are also, busy doing their own kind of work and whatnot. And like I figured like once we're all doing our thing, like at the high school reunion, like that's the opportunity to link up again. But I've just been like kind of crazy busy, and only like in the past couple of months, maybe like this past year, since the COVID and everything, did life in general and like things really start like slowing down, and I started getting a little more free time.
mm. Yeah, I mean that totally makes sense. But man, I give you props, man, being able to grind for like 5 years straight. Like I don't know, like a lot of people
I mean, kind
say,
of helped because like it for me, it was like do or die. Like
yeah,
I'm out of high school with not a very good like didn't really do
mm,
very good, so I don't have a whole lot of options. So like when I got an opportunity to work in cannabis, I just bust ass. I just worked my ass off for the opportunity, and I kind of just kept working on it.
yeah. I mean, like I guess like that's what I wanted to talk about, like early in the podcast too. Like how
I mean,
did,
that part's kind of hard. It's usually hard for
yeah,
me to talk about because like it was not easy at all, and
mm,
there are a lot. I mean, there are a handful of times where like definitely like I got to experience like the highest highs in my life that I've experienced so far. But majority of the time it was like really stressful. It's a lot of hard work, and you gotta push yourself past like normally for the grow, I'm working like 12 to 14 hours. Like when I'm gardening, like I'll get up at like 6, like 5:30 to 6 a.m. so I can get to the garden around 8, and
mm,
I'm there until like 8 or 10 p.m. when the lights go off. And that's every single day.
mm. Well, I
And
mean,
that's why we're trying to water and automate things. And on top of that too, a lot of like when you're doing medical stuff, and for someone like me where I came out here with only enough money to cover a couple months of rent, and pretty much like when I first moved out here, I was working a desk job at a hotel just to cover my expenses and whatnot. And in the meantime, I was like networking with people in the cannabis industry in Washington, like going to events like up in Washington in the medical days, like 5 years ago, when things were transitioning over to recreational. There are a lot of like what they call a sesh or like a session or like a smoke session.
mhm,
And there was basically like a part like a secret party for stoners, but really the people that came there, 80% of them were like consumers, and then 20% were producers, like people who are either like shady guys that are middlemaning people, or
mhm,
like people who are growing weed and making oil. And so I
mhm,
would go to those events to meet the people that were growing weed and making oil so I could like learn from them. And then the shady guys who were like middlemaning and stuff, those are the guys that I would talk to because I didn't have money, but these guys, they were like flush. Like I don't know what they were doing on the side, but they always had cash. So these are the people that I would ask for, like, hey, I have this idea. I found this house on Craigslist. Here's the dimensions of the garage. I have this buddy of mine that has these grow lights. So I would put together these deals, and like not every investor that says yes is a good investor. Like there's a couple of times where like I've had investors like pull a fast one on me, and like one day I go into the garden and like everything's gone, like the whole facility is stripped and like they've dipped off, or
mhm.
I've had to like restart from zero a couple of times in the past 5 years. And only in the past like year and a half have I finally been able to like align myself with the right partners, and we're starting to like get a solid footing in the 502, so we can leave the medical and black market behind and just go completely legitimate.
Mhm.
So I don't so we don't have to deal with like stresses and like the hardships. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like why it's really important to go to school, because if you don't have that proper education and credentials, this is how you have to prove yourself. Like you have to actually just do a lot of work, and like you just have to go through the experience firsthand.
Yeah, no,
It's
I
fun, but
totally.
it's also really hard.
I mean, honestly, like I'll admit, I don't think like school or like a formal education is like for everybody. Like honestly, I know this is rich coming from me, but like there's times where I just want to throw it all away and pursue stand-up comedy.
I mean, dude, I mean, I'm where I'm coming from. I fully support that. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, even I don't care if you've had an education and you decide to throw it all away, just to like do that. As long as you're like, I'm the type of person where if you want to chase your passions and if you're honest about it, I'll back you up. You got my
yeah.
backing.
No, like definitely. Like I'm off. Like this is another goal of the podcast. Like it's funny you bring it up. Like, but I just love talking to like people that are passionate about like their own lives. And like it seems like you're very passionate about what you're doing right now. That's why I'm enjoying this conversation. Like
Oh yeah.
we're like 2.5, 3 hours, almost 3 hours in. And like I'm enjoying this, man. Like just talking to like you, hearing about how passionate you are, like some things are like, I can't really visualize in my head when you're talking about like your grow operation and everything. And like
I'll send
the
some pictures later.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But like I think that's something that's like understated in like education. Like find like a passion and then pursue it. Like who cares about the money,
Yeah.
like I don't know, money at the end of the day isn't everything. Like you have to be able to love like what you're doing.
Money's just it's a tool for facilitating.
Yeah, like the
And your
way.
goal, like what the goal of the project should always be like your passion or your dreams, and
Mhm.
the money is just a tool.
Yeah, like the way I see it too is like, if you're passionate about what you're doing, like, you'll find a way to make like the finances work.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like definitely. Like,
I mean, like me, like in when I first came out here, I didn't have the money, but I didn't need the money. I just needed to make sure I knew how to um grow weed, because I figured I could ask somebody else for money. But since
mhm,
I just like my passion, I like I like horticulture and agriculture. Honestly, like one of my big things is um or like one of the bigger things that I've noticed is just like general agricultural practices, like how we farm our food to feed the entire nation,
mhm,
is not a very sustainable way. But the thing is, in the past 10 years, a lot of research has been going into organic and agriculture, or organic farming and living soils, like that food web that I was talking about,
mhm,
and like growing plants in in the living soil with the food web, with the microbes, like the gut biome and the skin biome, the dirt biome. Growing plants with a dirt biome is is not only better for the environment than salts, but it is actually able to repair the damage that has been done. Because really, the one of the big problems as to why our soil needs so much nutrition or needs so much salt added is that those microbes, we've killed them. Like the native microbes in all of our farmlands, their majority of them have been like killed. They've been wiped out due to tilling, due to poor watering methods, and due to like overflowing and overflooding them with salts. And the fact that we also clear out land to grow one crop, which basically it's like a leech now. Because since there's no other plants or creatures to put back into the dirt, and there's just one crop that's eating, you're leaching nutrition and you're leaching life from the soils. So like my thing is, eventually, like depending on like how much traction I can get personally and how much like I can get accomplished in the cannabis industry, so I can build on top of what I build in the cannabis industry, is to try to help push um, organic farming and living soils on a industrial or commercial level, so that we can start as a nation, you know, fixing the damage that we've been doing for the past 60 to 80 years of agricultural farming, because there's a better way to do it. And on top of that, the food that you grow in living soils tastes so much better. As I have my own garden, I have like a small garden myself, and like living soils food tastes a whole lot better than synthetic soil or like synthetic salt.
Mhm. Yeah.
But like that's like where I like my passion lies.
Yeah, that's great, man. Like, yeah, definitely like monocropping is like an issue that I think years down the line, we're gonna look back at monoculture or monocropping. We're gonna look back at like factory farming of like animals and be like, wow, that was a really messed up thing, those humans were doing at that time. Like I think the future humans are gonna look very poorly upon our agricultural techniques now.
Hmm.
Like,
And like it's crazy too, because we've only been using salts for less than 200 years, and look how much damage like we've already done.
mhm,
Because like this technique that we currently use on like a general scale, or like what most large farms use, is still a relatively new way of like agricultural farming. And it was because it was trying to please the whole commercial setting versus the artisan or local setting. Because like when you're feeding your village is a lot different than when you're feeding like several states.
mhm,
So you
yeah.
have to like
So
your techniques and your tactics are going to be different.
Hey guys, just a quick break. I wanted to talk about our sponsor of this podcast, Anchor. Anchor is a free all-in-one podcasting suite accessible on any computer or mobile device. I've been getting a lot of questions, honestly, about like how did I start my podcast? And my journey started with me trying to find a software which allowed me to do everything I needed, such as recording and editing. And honestly, like Anchor like went above and beyond that. It definitely makes it easy for you to get published on various popular apps such as Spotify and Apple and Google podcasts. And it also helps you get monetized by setting you up with sponsors as your channel or your podcast begins to grow. Even if you're not like a podcast creator, you should definitely download this app, as you can find your favorite podcast and listen to it there, or you can explore and find new podcasts like these. So yeah, download the free Anchor app today from the Google Play Store or the App Store, or go to anchor.fm to get started.
we've been talking for quite some time. I think this is a good place to like at least end the podcast. We can talk off recording if you want to. But yeah, thanks for doing this, man.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thanks for hitting me up and giving me the opportunity. I this is like the first time I've talked about what I do to somebody that's outside of like my known network, or like the people that I deal with every day. So like
Mm-hmm.
this has been pretty good, because I honestly have a lot of anxiety about talking to people about what I do that are outside of my world,
Uh-huh.
because there's so many different opinions and stigmas, and like I don't like some stuff I just don't want to listen to. I just
Mm-hmm.
rather do something else. So I kind
No,
of been avoiding the
I
topic. So
I
I
totally
thank you
got
for giving
that.
me this opportunity, man. Like this is
Yeah.
I look forward to hopefully talking to you some more about this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, for
Hopefully my
sure.
speech will become a little less manic, or a little more
No, it's fine. I mean, like
understandable.
I feel like I totally understand, like if you're like the expert in your 20s, like, I feel like that's